forgot. I'm not on right now. What? Just kidding. Yeah. Maybe. Oh, wait, what? There we go. Should start waking up earlier. Slash. How much? 120? Oh, hell yeah. I'm loving the adventure system. It's probably the most fun version of the what do you call it? Yeah, I'm not ready for that. Meat mining. Is it? All right, now I'm ready. Wow, Giant Fury. Oh, okay. All right. uh, info. Yeah, I'm gonna scan that. Yep. All right. Scan. Hmm. Wow, you can. Oh, it's. permanent. Wow. You're so cool. PHA7. PHA. Oh. Mechanical. That's cool. Expensive. Oh, I like. Cool. $34, $24, $1,000. Oh, it's permanent. Cool. Yeah, I gotta change my point. Not eligible. Fuck me. Fuck. Try arena. Cool skybox. It's beautiful. It's more of a sky sphere.
May I tempt you with my wares? Your patronage is always
The
appreciated.
fuck? Which one is the innkeeper? Yeah. Hall and Adelia.
More Walker. Fortune and wealth to you. Please, do
Wait, whoa, whoa. Where the hell did you get that? Stop. Fuck! I missed it. Oh well. I'll find it. I think it's a male. Yeah. So, okay. Blind Fury and Demonic together. Ooh, looks pretty. I like the guy's team log. Mana Rift. Oh, it's a 3. He's gonna bait me. Yep. Let him come in. There you go. What the fuck? Ah! Fucking god damn it! Get. Fuck. There you go. Come on.
It's too far away. I need to
Okay.
get closer. It's too far away.
Missed it.
I'm out of range. I need to get closer. I need a
Nice.
target.
Why don't I get the healer first?
I need to target something.
Thank you. Nope. All right, arena again. That was fun. Why not? Demonology. Race.
Hey, what's up with it, guys? Welcome back to another video. Now this is going to be a basic kind of beginner's guide to Arena for Demonology. I'm going to have some clips of some games here at the end. This is the first week that Arena has come out, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to the rating and all that kind of stuff because it's a little bit crazy for the first couple weeks until everything kind of settles. But, you know, some of these were some good games, and it gives you a good idea of at least the play style. I don't know how strong Demo is going to be at a very competitive level once you start getting into, you know, 2600 rating, stuff like that. But it is pretty decent and it's a lot of fun. I've been playing with, I think Arresto Shaman's a really good twos partner, and there's a lot of good threes comps that we can run. And I'm going to show you guys kind of some of the strengths of what Demonology is and kind of the general play style and setup of what I'm trying to do. Now let me go over the talents first, and this is the build that that I'm currently have been using. Demonic Strength, pretty much a go-to here. Kind of makes sense how you would justify either of these other ones. Power Siphon, potentially could see running Doom here, but I don't like Demonic Calling since we are running Master Summoner. That's pretty normal and straightforward when it comes to Demo PvP. So I think it's really between one of these two, and I just like Power Siphon because being able to kind of hold this as an additional burst if I need to. I have that. Doom's also very fine if you like running Doom. And you're not worried about it getting cleansed off depending on what comp you're playing against. Demon Skin, I think, is the default here for PvP. 35 row, I've been running Soul Strike. Now, Vile Fiend is great. However, 1.7 cast time is kind of long to add that into your kit of already having a handful of casts that you need to get off. So I prefer running Soul Strike. The other thing that's interesting about this is this does not get locked out when you get kicked on like Shadow and stuff like that. So you can still do this while you're, you know, basically not able to cast other things. So even though you might not be prioritizing this, I like having this as an option in PvP. And from the Shadows, it's just, this is not a long enough debuff time to be able to reliably be able to, you know, utilize this debuff in PvP. If you get CC'd or your target runs around a corner or something, it's not reliable. So I prefer Soul Strike in this row. Has been a good choice, and I really have enjoyed running this. Mortal Coil for me is the go-to here. I don't think there's really a good justification for the other ones, but maybe if you want to run something else, you definitely can. I think Mortal Coil is just superior to these other two in PvP. In the 45 row, I'm always running Grimoire of Felguard just because it's very, very good as a 2-minute cooldown. An additional stun gives you just a lot of control, a lot of burst, and it's much more impactful than these other two talents in my opinion. And then we go down here to Demonic Consumption. Nether Portal is too long of a cast and not reliable to be able to use this effectively. And Sacrifice Souls requires us to have a lot of demons up constantly. And there are playstyles you can kind of try and do this, but this is hard in Arena to really manage effectively. Demonic Consumption is just very, very good all around. One thing worth mentioning, though, is that if your Tyrant does get CC'd or, you know, people run away from your Tyrant or whatever, this is basically going to be negated. So if you're having a real hard time with having any actual output from your Tyrant, it might be better to go like Sacrifice Souls because you might actually be able to get some value from this. So I think that is going to be a potential issue as we start getting into higher rating and people get more familiar with Demo. Being able to play around, you know, avoiding our Tyrant is going to make talents like Demonic Consumption potentially not very good if it's not actually able to sit out there and cast its spells. Now the PvP talents, like I mentioned already, Master Summoner is pretty straightforward. And now I think Essence Drain, I think this is actually going to be kind of like sleeper strong when we start getting into having some more legendaries and conduits and things like that. Because this is, Life Drain's already pretty strong in general. And the thing that's great about Life Drain is it's on the Shadow spell school. So if you cast Life Drain and you get kicked, you can still cast things like Hand of Gul'dan and your Demon Bolt. So I kind of have been using Life Drain a good amount in situations if I'm kind of getting focused to basically bait out kicks. And if they do kick it, I can then just start spamming like Hand of Gul'dans and things like that. So I've been actually really enjoying this. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I don't have it yet because we need the first week of the Great Vault to come out, but this legendary Claw of Endereth, I think that's how you say that, your drain life now channels 100% faster and restores health 100% faster. This is the legendary effect that you can get from the Great Vault. And then you pair this with things like, I know this is slightly cut off for you guys, so I apologize for that, but you pair that with things like Accrued Vitality, which your drain life heals you for 52% of the amount drained over 8.3 seconds. So you can see we have a few things that we can start doing to kind of cater to our drain life.
Got wrecked.
And the
Fuck.
legendaries, I would say all of our legendaries are kind of lackluster when it comes to PvP. So I actually do think this is going to be the legendary that I am going to be running once it's available for PvP specifically. I think it's going to be our strongest legendary for PvP. You pair all this life drain stuff with our Soul Link and just, you know, the demon arm and all that kind of stuff, and we just are really, really tanky as a caster. Not to mention us playing Necrolord, we have things like Fleshcraft, and you have kind of these other things at your disposal. It's pretty insane. So that's the two that, let me move this over, the two PvP talents I run all the time are these. Gateway Mastery I really like a lot. But you definitely could run any of these other ones if you really like Nether Ward, or you want to use this kind of as a flex talent between, you know, Nether Ward against casters and Call Fel Lord against melee.
Warlock
You have all
should
kinds of
tank.
options you
They
can
really
do.
should.
With this build,
Just have a
Essence
separate
Drain
tree.
is not necessary, but once we get that legendary, and if you have the conduit and you're able to kind of pair those things together, I think it's going to make our drain life very, very powerful and a very useful spell for us to have at
call
our
it like
disposal.
Fel.
So I think these two are going to be kind of stuck where you're not going to want to get rid of these. Not to mention, I didn't even talk about this, but the
Fel
damage
protection.
mitigation you get from the Essence Drain debuff that you
Yeah.
apply to the target
Something
is
basic like
really
that.
massive as well. So this just makes us really tanky, and if we pair that with, you know, like the legendaries and stuff I already said, I think this is going to be a go-to. So again, Gateway Mastery, not necessary at all. I just have grown to really like this talent, and but if you like any of these other ones, you could totally sub this out. This is not instrumental to this playstyle at all. And then now conduits, real quick. Now the thing that I found to be the best for this build, and I'm still kind of messing with these, but I think Fel Commando is the go-to here. Reason being is in our burst setup, the vast majority of our damage is coming from our Fellstorm and our actual pet itself. And people tend to focus your pet sometimes in PvP, so I think this is going to be our go-to conduit here for this build specifically. The other thing, like I'd mentioned, is this Drain Life. Endurance Conduit is also very good. If you're playing Necrolord, I think running this Marileth tree, there's so many weird names and all this stuff, but this first, you know, Soulbind path that you get, this is very strong. This procs pretty reliably, and it's percentage health based, so it's going to be good for the entirety of Shadowlands. And I like this setup right here with these two initially, and then we'll have some options as we get down here later. And I think Ultimate Form is going to be very, very strong once we get into, you know, the later parts of the expansion and we actually unlock this. So while this, if you're watching this at a later date, I still think this is always going to be a very, very strong defensive, well-rounded Soulbind tree for us here. The other conduits that are pretty decent, if you don't have Fel Commander or you don't like it, Born of Blood is decent. If you're able to actually get some Hand of Gul'dan casts off, this can be good. I found that it's hard to really utilize the Demonic Core procs and not overcap on shards effectively in PvP, just in general, because there's a lot of parameters that you're dealing with, and sometimes you can't hard cast Hand of Gul'dan to dump your shards. So I found that the Demonic Core proc type conduits usually are hard to really utilize well, and you don't really get a lot of consistent value from them because of just PvP stuff. Tyrant Soul is a similar situation. This can also be good, but if people, you know, run away from you during this whole time of your Tyrant and after your Tyrant, it's hard to utilize this well. Carnivorous Stalkers could be a good option here, but you get a lot more damage from your Felguard, so I think Fel Commando is just superior if you're comparing these two like pet damage options. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. We don't get a lot of damage from our Decimating Bolt with this build, so I wouldn't say Fatal Decimation is very good for this setup either. Now, you'll see in these clips here, there's a lot of macros and different things that I've used for pet control and all that kind of stuff, and I'm going to make a separate video for that because it'll make this video very, very long. But there's a couple really significant macros for PvP specifically when we're talking about demonology. Now, one of them, as you see right there, is I have a slash cast Fel Domination, slash cast Felguard macro, so it's just one button to basically resummon my minion. That's very important. If you guys don't have that, I suggest doing that because there's not scenarios where you're wanting to just immediately summon a different minion. You're always really wanting to summon your Felguard, at least with this build. I forgot to transmog our stupid cloak here. Now, the other thing is, I don't know if this will let me actually set a focus. Oh, it will. Nice. So one thing that's important here are focus macros, and there's only really 2 of these that I use regularly and are a very integral part of this playstyle. And that's a focus fear macro as well as a focus axe toss macro. Now, you could do this if you were running with a succubus, for example, or a fel hunter. You could still use the same macro. I think it's like a slash focus macro at or pet command macro at focus, if that makes sense. So that these will change. You'll see if I switch pets, these change to, you know, seduce for succubus and the kick for fel hunter. So this is relevant, is a relevant macro all the time in PvP for basically every spec, but really more so it's very important because you have your pet stun that's ranged, that's huge, and it doesn't DR with your fear. So our general gameplay here is,
Wow, it's an hour long. Prison, definitely use that more often. I'll enjoy it. Oh, back up, back up. What the fuck? Get the rogue. Charge! In prison. Fuck! No. See what he does. He's still going. Yeah, double demon heart isn't really that good. You need someone to like a ranged DPS to back you up. Someone good at CCing. Yeah, that would not go well. Not at all. Alright. Switch my DK.
We'll talk a little bit about comps and playstyle and rotation, some of the new abilities, and we'll call it quits there. I'm going to make a comp tier list sometime later, maybe next week, maybe a week and a half from now, because I think comps should have their own video. I generally mention them at the end of videos, but there's no way I'm talking for another hour about these things at the end of all of this. So I'd rather just mention it, wet your palate a little bit, you know, and then make an actual, 50-minute tier list video to explain all the comps for Unholy and Frost. And those tier list videos did pretty well, so I'm happy to make another one. But as a quick brief mention, Frost TSG, Frost Windwalker DK, absolutely disgusting. Frost TSG is god tier. It's so good. Again, grip, blind, absolute zero AoE stun. Drop your Kyrian Spear down on him. Blade Storm, Chill Streak, and oh my god, it's a catastrophe. It's so much AoE damage. all in at once. Same with Windwalker. I was talking about it. The setup: grip, blind, absolute zero, or grip, absolute zero,
Arms,
chill streak,
warrior.
fist of fury,
Wait,
grip, blind, leg sweep.
wait. You say demon hunter, warrior.
So we'll talk a little bit about comps and playstyle and rotation, some of the new abilities, and we'll call it quits there. I'm going to make a comp tier list sometime later, maybe next week, maybe a week and a half from now, because I think comps should have their own video. I generally mention them at the end of videos, but there's no way I'm talking for another hour about these things at the end of all of this. So I'd rather just mention it, wet your palate a little bit, you know, and then make an actual, 50-minute tier list video to explain all the comps for Unholy and Frost. And those tier list videos did pretty well, so I'm happy to make another one. But as a quick brief mention, Frost TSG, Frost Windwalker DK, absolutely disgusting. Frost TSG is just god tier. It's so good. Again, grip, blind, absolute zero AoE stun. Drop your Kyrian Spear down on him. Blade Storm, Chill Streak, and oh my god, it's a catastrophe. It's so much AoE damage, all in at once. Same with Windwalker. I was talking about it. The setup: grip, blind, absolute zero, or grip, absolute zero, Chill Streak, Fist of Fury, grip, blind, leg sweep, pillar, Fist of Fury, and you've got Nuki, AoE goes, and they're disgusting, and you have Heartstop to slow their defenses so they can't keep up with it, and it's fantastic. Frost is great for that. Frost can also play with casters. You can play with Boomkin, which has crazy one-shot goes. So remember, now that you have an AoE stun, you can set up things, you can play with things you weren't able to play with before. Grip, blind, AoE stun on 2 DPS, while you chill streak them in the Frost Worm's Fury stun, and he convokes on that. That's insane. Let's say they're both melee or going him. You grip the healer into both melee, blind, AoE stun. Now they're all triple AoE stunned with a chill streak in your burst window, and they convoke on that. And then they beam, a root beam right out of it, and you get more pseudo CC on top of all that. Frost DK Boomkin. Frost DK Aflock is even good, because you can peel for him so well, and if you do a grip, blind, AoE stun, and chill streak all of them, and then he gets his crazy AoE trained soul, and he gets dots on all 3 of them, he gets UAs on all 3 of them, then he's rotting. And Heartstop is a good rot component, and Chill Streak, and they're all slowed, and that's a good rot component. And they can't stop the rot because if they dispel and they're that low, they're instantly dead to the unstable affliction backlash, right? So you can't really stabilize from a go if you're all UA'd up, and they are because you just stunned them all and blinded them all and slowed them all, which gave your Aflock a chance to get everything off. So you have options now, only because of this, to play both melee cleaves, which are great with it, but also caster cleaves now that you can set up. Remember, when you had a good AoE stun in Legion, DK Destro was really good. And that's a caster. Frost DK Destro. Frost DK can play with casters as long as it can set up goes by itself and nuke people while the caster gets to freely tee off. Because not only are you doing damage in that go, you're also peeling for your caster in that go. And it's bimodal like that. So it needed something like this. So Absolute Zero is the enabler for Frost DK to play with casters. And those are the types of comps you would want to play with that. I've talked about setup and playstyle so much, but just to show you, like, remember, the pillar window is so impactful. So you would do that AoE stun, right, on both of them, and you put the pillar down. And then remember, you just want to rotate Howling Blast procs with Obliterate.
All right, I'll go in first.
Damage, right? And then when you run out of procs, you just Frost Strike.
What's up, bud?
Right? And that's your window.
How much, man?
So during pillar, you're
Didn't
spending
know people
every
actually
global
join voice chat
reactivation.
on Arena Scrims.
Yeah, I figured I'd make it a thing. That way I don't have to type. Oh shit.
Got it. I'm pretty sure it's just him, actually.
Correct. That wasn't fair.
Yeah, that sucked. GG's, bud.
GG. That's fun. All right.
Obliterate. And every Rhyme proc on Howling Blast, and then you're alternating always. So if you have a Killing Machine, use Obliterate. If you don't, then that means you're off Killing Machine, which means you need to use a Howling Blast Rhyme proc to get the Killing Machine back. Or if you don't have a Rhyme proc, use Frost Strike to get the Killing Machine back. So it's either Obliterate Frost Strike, Obliterate Frost Strike, Obliterate Rhyme proc, Obliterate Rhyme proc, or some combination of both. And you're just trying to get windows during every pillar, right? You had that AoE stun, Grip Blind, AoE stun, and then every pillar, you're just trying to get as much of that off as possible while Chill Streak bounces back and forth. It won't be between these guys, but while Chill Streak is going. So that's Grip, Blind, Absolute Zero, Pillar, Chill Streak. You should probably Remorseless before you do this. Honestly, you can Necrolords too. You could probably just Pillar, Necrolords, Remorseless, and then Grip, Blind, AoE stun, and then just start doing your burst like that. So setting up with Pillar and Remorseless and A-Bomb's Limb, and then gripping them into that mess, Blind, AoE stun, allows you to already be in your burst while you do your setup, and then you can just Rhyme proc from A-Bomb's Limb. You get free Rhyme procs, which is also avalanche damage, which is why you have so much fucking burst during these windows, right? Rhyme proc, Obliterate. Rhyme proc, Obliterate. Frost Strike, Obliterate. Rhyme proc, Obliterate. And it's pretty straightforward and really, really, really high damage. And you're gonna love it. As for other tools that we get Sack Pet, make sure you use that. Top yourself, I use it all the time. When you watch my stream, I always say sacking, because it's my last resort, right? You can sack, which is a 25% heal, and then Death Pact. So that is a 75% heal. And then the backlash doesn't feel so bad, because if you're going from 10% to 85%, the backlash is fine because you're still topped. So it gives your healer a chance to catch up. And then make sure you use Lichborn. Lichborn Death Coil heals when you have Pillar going and all those strength procs. Actually make the Lichborn a little higher health. So if somebody's evasion, parried, bubbled, kiting you, and you can't hit anything, make sure you use Lichborn heals. It's much better for Unholy than it is for Frost because they have the 2 free procs. But again, still tons of situations where that can be valuable. So don't just rely on pressing Death Strike over and over. Remember the stuff I talked about in the video where you can put on Emblem and Sanguination and Transfusion and Hypothermic. And you could use Hypothermic to get more Death Coils off. And then Transfusion to get your Death Strikes off. And then Sanguination procs and you heal back up to full. And then you use Sack Pet and Death Pact and you got another 75% heal. Look at all these sources. You have Hypo and Transfuse, then the Sack Pet, Death Pact full heal, and the Lichborn heal up, and then Sanguination procs, and you heal up while you're Lichborn healing, and then you can rotate through and Transfusion is a short cooldown, so then you have Transfusion and you do it all again. Don't just think that Death Strike every global is going to save you anymore. Use all of these other tools that they gave you instead, and get a full, well-rounded survivability toolkit. No, you're not going to feel tanky. Yes, you're still going to die. Do you know why? Everybody dies in Shadowlands Season 1. I've played 6-second games against some of the best players in the game. Everybody's squishy, everybody dies. They are squishy. Players that have played 20,000 games, they die in 5 seconds. Wow. So you're going to definitely die in 5 seconds. Miscellaneous person on the other side of the screen right now. That's okay. You can still use your full toolkit to survive as long as possible and try and make them the one who dies first. Because that's just like the tooltip says at the bottom, try and reduce the enemy health bar to 0 before yours does. And I mean, you can still use your toolkit. Everybody dies fast. Stick with it. You're going to be okay. I know it's frustrating to come in to the game maybe you took a long break, or maybe this is the first time you're playing and you're like, what the hell, dude? I'm dead in 4 seconds. I get it. I thought they were gonna nerf damage done, but apparently they doubled down on this burst meta. But hey, it's fast. It's gonna build your reflexes. It's gonna get your heart pounding. Let's try and stay with it. Watch my stream. It'll be linked at the end of this. We have some crazy one-shots. Maybe, though it's very frustrating to die. Yo, what up guys, it's Flark, and welcome to the Frost version of the PvP guides for Shadowlands Season 1. So these are going to be very long, and they're going to cover everything from Covenants to Legendaries and everything in between. There's a lot of new
they're not even
systems,
coming
a lot
here.
of things people are asking about. Should be able to flesh out everything that I can. But, as I said in the Unholy video, I've been pushing with a set of IRL friends, guys I've known for a long time, and we've done surprisingly well. We're about 2,600 MMR. We're at top 100 for a while. Haven't played.
2,600.
We should be able to get back there, no problem.
10v10.
Been queuing into multi rank 1 players and somehow winning with my IRL buds. It's a pretty crazy season, and you shouldn't look too much into it. But these guys are having a great time, and we're having a great push together. And it's also given me the chance to experiment and to try out these things, so I can convey the information to you. And I got a very good opportunity to do that. I have done the end of this 2,600-ish, 2,650 MMR push with Frost, and Frost is very, very good right now. I predicted that 4, 5, 6 months back, and I feel pretty proud about that one. I noted that these two talents, Heartstop and Chillstreak, were so impactful that they made BFA Frost good, even though BFA Frost did no damage with any of its abilities. It was just a Gushing Wound, Heartstop, Chillstreak bot. But now we do damage with our abilities. Obliterate hits extraordinarily hard, and especially if set up well. And it hits extraordinarily hard in burst windows with Chillstreak and Necrolord, A-Bomb's Limb going, and you just have a lot of tools to win games fast. And you still have Heartstop and Chillstreak. Fantastic peels, slows, and movement disruption with Heartstop Delirium, cooldown disruption, and all that good stuff. So essentially it was still what it was in BFA, but now it can actually do damage, which make it even better, and in BFA it was 3,500 viable. So good spec. So now let's talk about what to do to get the most out of a good spec. And I think that I've gotten enough experimentation to help you guys
Pally.
in that way. So generally I have these videos I release a little later in the season. People were asking a lot of things a lot of times, and I figured that you guys wanted to, I mean, there's a lot of new systems. I wanted to get some sort of semblance of information on them so you could push with me to get the awesome Glad Mount and the fantastic title and all the cool elite sets and all the good stuff that's going on right now. You didn't want to wait around for halfway through the season. You wanted to participate now while it was exciting and fresh. And I understand that. So I played the heck out of it. I pushed with my buds.
Oh, fuck.
I think I got the information. So let me shut up and start talking about the stuff that you actually care about. Starting with itemization. So itemization, stat weights we'll start with. Pretty set in stone.
We have
for
3 healers.
the most part.
I think I'm just out of range of him.
That
was my fault.
Holy DK video. But if you're coming fresh, versatility by far is the best PvP stat in the game. Right now, it was already the definitive PvP stat because it did both damage and survivability, which matters in PvP significantly more than it does in PvE. But also then, look at this. Gladiator's Distinction. Damage and healing benefit increased by 40%. Take any stat in a stat weight chart for PvE and you kind of compare them. They're all pretty close. And you just multiply those numbers, one of those numbers, just one, by 1.4. It is much higher than any of the other numbers. So, versatility gets that distinction. Versatility by far, especially in a meta this intense, where you need some survivability, some big rebound heals from Death Strike, and some damage reduction for the one-shots, and it gives you an enormous amount of output, because that increases your damage as well. Versatility, by far your best stat. So the important thing, then, is the other ones, right? Because you knew that going into the video probably. So mastery, haste, and crit. Well, haste and mastery are very, very close. Crit we can eliminate. Crit is, it feels like it should be good. And big obliterate crits is kind of staple. And it's not nerfed in PvP anymore. But it's still very bad for Frost. And it's because of this talent. Spoiler on the talent section. We'll get back to this. But,
We'll do Cindergosa.
obliteration makes it so
Yeah.
every obliterate will crit
Thank you.
during Pillar of
Oh,
Frost
yeah,
because you
oh, yeah,
alternate
oh, yeah.
obliterate, frost strike, obliterate, frost strike. So if every obliterate crits, and that is our big damage generator, finally again, and you don't get any benefit from, you can't double crit, and we don't have like the Chaos Bolt effect where you get more
He's
damage
holy.
from crit. And effectively, every single one of those guaranteed crits makes your crit obsolete for that window. And Pillar of Frost is when we're killing people. That is our window of damage. That is our window of pressure. So during your most important window, crit loses almost all value. Well, not almost all, but a significant amount of value in that window, right? So if it loses any value, especially a significant one, it's not going to compete with haste and mastery that are still extremely impactful during those burst windows. So we've established verse at the very top and crit at the bottom. Haste and mastery right between. And distinguishing between them is not something I think anybody could realistically do. And if they're saying that they have, I think it's a bluff. I'll tell you why. Mastery is great. Increases your frost damage. That's Chill Streak. That's your Killing Machine obliterates. That's Frost Fever. That's Frost Wind Fury. It's fantastic. A great stat. But our aforementioned obliteration windows are extremely impactful. And
Anti-magic!
you
Oh
have
my
to
god.
rotate a
Shell and
Killing
zone
Machine
speed.
generator, Frost Strike or Howling Blast, into Obliterate during Pillar, and only during Pillar. After Pillar ends, that window is over. So the more generators you can press during this window, the more damage you're going to get by far, because you're going to fit much more Killing Machine obliterates into that window. And if you can finish with one more extra spender, even if Pillar drops, you still get that big Killing Machine obliterate, which is where most of the damage is coming from. So haste during that window is extremely impactful. Rune generation, autos during the window, fine, but really global cooldown reduction. It's extremely important. So I think ideally you would want some mixture of both. Mastery just does flat damage, but if you're not getting enough globals to really fit in two more obliterates, you're losing a significant chunk of damage anyway. So if you can get both and just max out verse, then you're good. Now when we're fully conquest geared out, you're going to be able to choose every stat that you want. And in fact, I've looked at the conquest.
Motion detected at the front door.
Do is have main stat verse on every piece, and then pretty much half haste and half mastery, and then you've got a set. No crit. Crit's not good for those windows. Verse is extremely good for those windows. Mastery is extremely good for the output in those windows, and then enough haste so you can get enough globals off to make those windows more impactful during every burst window. Remember, you want to fit as much pressure as you can without getting CC'd or without running out of generation because you were chains of icing on the way to them, and that kind of spends your runes in ways that PvE does not. So with a full set of conquest gear, you should be able to create that ideal window. So what I suggest is verse at the very top, mastery and haste side by side. They synergize with each other. There's no reason you should have to have just one. One makes the other better. It's a myth that you need exactly two stats. Verse, mastery, haste, crit at the very bottom. So you make a conquest set with verse.
Heal!
Boom, done. Now let's talk about gear.
I tried. It was like
I went
9
over
of
this
them.
entire thing in my Unholy video, but I'll do the entire thing again in case you only want to watch one. Ideally, what you want to do for gear is pretty much prioritize that end goal in mind. So eventually you're going to have conquest gear that trumps everything. All PvE gear, everything. Your conquest gear is going to trump it all because it's going to have that main stat verse and the off stat that you choose. But on the way there, if you have a higher item level piece, like a heroic piece, with haste or mastery on it, as long as it has verse, run it. So if you got from your Emissary of War, if you got the Colossal Plate
I
Pieces,
wasted that.
wear them. If you got this, it has crit but has main stat verse, so wear it. If it has main stat verse, you're gonna wear it, even if it has crit. If you get these legs, lucky man, wear them. If you get this
Control.
chest or this
Thank you.
back, very well, wear it, right? But well, that's a little frustrating, right? Because it's like, well, PvE then gives you an advantage still. It only gives you an advantage for a short period of time, and titles are awarded at the end of the season. MMR is the most inflated at the end of the season. Everybody who's played a season of World of Warcraft got a higher rating at the end
Fuck.
of the season. So what you're trying to do is plan big
Please.
picture, which is all conquest gear with haste and mastery split. Verse and stuff. If you have any of those pieces that have verse on them, even if it's an off-stat verse, wear it. You'll
Come
eventually
on,
replace it.
come on.
Wear it. It'll make you slightly more powerful on the way there. That said,
Fuck me.
because of conquest being
I
your best,
pushed
remember,
way
on
too
the
hard.
way is even at the end of everything, PvE gear was still better.
Alright.
So even when you were maxed out on PvP stuff,
So
you still had to go farm PvE gear. It's not the case now. Get high rating, you upgrade this conquest gear to very, very high island levels, and that's what you're going to run the whole season. Which means when all is said and done, you had to PvP for the PvP gear. And that's a good feel.
We won.
So, ideally, how to get there, you talk about a few PvE pieces, maybe you get lucky, maybe you do some heroic rating, maybe you just do the Emissary of War. Fine. But
Yes.
also, the Great Vault,
Yes.
3 choices
Yes,
of
yes,
PvP gear per week. That's going to always have main stat verse. Pick the one that's the highest conquest commitment, like the weapon. We'll talk about that in a second. Or legs, or chest, or helm, as long as it has haste or mastery on it, right? Haste or mastery, the best one, highest conquest requirement. That's what you're going to choose. Chest, helm, legs, weapon, any of those. And you can use your conquest gear, your conquest currency rather, to fill out the rest of the pieces, and you can select the ones with haste and mastery, and then verse main stat on them. As for the exact path to get there, people are asking, well, what'd you buy? What'd you buy the first week? What'd you buy the second week? Should I save up for my weapon? And they're very frantic about it. They're losing sleep. They're having nightmares. It's in their head, right? I don't think you should fear so much over those choices. So let me show you something. I bought a ring. There's my mastery ring, first mastery, and first haste necklace. Just like I said I was going to do. A little bit of haste, a little mastery, right? These have a ton of versatility on them. Look at that. 165, 147. Jewelry has a ton of secondary stats. And like I said, versatility is fantastic. It's better than it is in PvE by a long shot, maybe by 80%, because of the survivability and because of the 2-set bonus. Which means it's very hard to just sim your gear and say, well, this piece is better because of how much better this is in PvP. So I grabbed a ring and a necklace, and I got 25% verse. And when you put in the 2-set, that's like nearly 38% healing done and damage, and 12% damage reduction. And that helps with the survivability.
Your defense. Hells
People
yeah.
are getting one shot left and right. So slingshotting, if I take 30k damage and a couple globals, I slingshot back up with Death Strike just like the old days, because I have 40% more healing, and I've taken a ton of damage, so I can slingshot back up. It helps with my Lichborn heals, helps with Sanguination when I run it, helps with every source of healing, Sack Pet, all these sources of healing. It helps with all of that.
Sack
It helps me take a little bit less damage to the one shot, so maybe I can live and actually live to get that Death Strike off. And honestly, I haven't been dying that much, so I think it's been working.
Ooh.
So that's one path, right?
Alright.
But also, you could save all your conquest and buy a weapon. Get a big weapon, you get big obliterates, and it feels real good. You do more damage, right? More output. And those are two perfectly logical paths, right? Which should kind of show you instead of being terrified and losing sleep over the fact, well, what did you choose? Oh crap, I chose this. Am I screwed for the season? No, of course not. The end goal for everybody is the same, and you can all get there. But there were two fantastically logical paths. I wanted a bunch of verse, and I got it. And I'm queuing into multi-rank 1s with my RL friends, and we're winning games. You could also get a thick weapon and try and one-shot folks with that. Or you could pray that you get your weapon from the Great Vault and just keep filling out pieces to get as much item level as you can with main stat verse. These are all logical. Don't lose sleep. They all work. Just keep filling out big conquest pieces with haste verse or verse mastery on them from your vault, and fill out as many conquest pieces as you can, and soon we're all going to reach that point where all those tiny little important changes come together to make a big change, right? So a little change here, a little change there. You're not gonna win 20 more games because you've got a 0.1% difference, but you put in 40.1% differences all together.
You get 40%.
Covenants and legendaries and full itemization in every choice that you make in the context of this entire video. That's when you've got difference. The end goal. Finally, let's talk about trinkets. This one's easy. I already spoiled it. PvP trinkets. PvP trinkets. The whole season, the whole expansion, every single bit of Shadowlands, you're only going to get more verse. Which means this is only going to be more valuable. If you have 60% verse, 40% of 60% is more than 40% of 25%. Who knows how high this is going to go as we get more gem sockets, more item level, and bigger enchants, and epic gems, and Shadowlands season.
Oh my god.
Right?
Yep.
Only gets more valuable. If it's already this valuable now, it's going to be disgusting in Shadowlands Season 3. So you're never going to take these off. Now you could be a psychopath like me and run 2 DPS trinkets queuing into multi-rank 1 players, or you could be a regular human being and put on Gladiator's Medallion instead of the Insignia. Now as Frost, you will always run Badge. It's a 1-minute cooldown. What else is a 1-minute cooldown? Pillar of Frost. You will always run Badge. If you ever take something off for the Medallion, it will be Insignia. You will run Badge, and you will run a Medallion. And that's what you probably should do. Because again, you don't have to be a psychopath and run no trinket and just for a little bit extra damage because you're a goober like me. Do as I say, not as I do, run the Medallion. But if you want to be crazy, you can also run double damage trinkets because we have AMS and IBF, and I'm winning all my games in 6 seconds or losing all my games in 6 seconds, so I don't really care about my trinket because I use IBF and AMS as a trinket, and the games are over in 6 seconds. And it's working. I mean, we're getting granted our Glad Mount. That Glad Mount looks sick, and we're really happy about it. But really, for the 99% majority of the population, switch to that setup right here. Look at this. This is beautiful. But, right. Badge, perfect trinket, syncs up with every pillar, absolutely fantastic, and of course, you need the 2-set bonus. Relentless is going to be decent when the meta slows down with human only. Otherwise, for Orc, or every other situation, or if the meta never slows down, always run Medallion. Okay, that's trinkets. There's nothing else to it. You're never going to run a PvE trinket, so there's literally no other choices except for the Stam trinket, which I don't even think I've fully upgraded. You could go full survivability. There's other choices you can use for survivability that we'll talk about in a bit, but if you're playing the full survivability kit, like Pact, and you've got your Sack Pet, and the Transfusion, and then Sanguination, you can also put on your Stam trinket with the Gladiator's Medallion, and you can have even more survivability. That is for all the folks who are like, I literally can't live. I'm playing with pre-made healers, I can't live, I die every game, it's getting frustrating already. That is part 1 of a bunch of tips and tricks that I will show you if I could say the word. But that is gearing for the most part. Enchants and rune forges are actually super straightforward, so we can blow through that section. Enchants are versatility, because that's your best stat. Eternal strength, because that's the highest amount of strength. It's plus 15. You get it right there. Eternal stats for your chest, because your damage is so high that your damage matters way more than a proc. You get 10 extra strength, and the proc does fairly little, and you get 30 extra stamina. And survivability is extremely important in this meta, as we're going to say millions of times over this video. And having stamina is good because we have percentage heals. It's just good. And then finally, your cloak enchant, stamina and leech. You do a lot of damage, you heal for some. Can save you sometimes. You're not going to run no enchant, so stamina and leech I think is the best option there. Stamina, leech, 30 stats, eternal strength, obviously verse. That leaves us just with the weapon enchant, the DK specific one. And I think there is, just like Unholy, one output option and 2 niche options. The output option is Razor Ice instead of Fallen Crusader. I think it is a little known fact actually, because this nerf was in place so long ago and is not documented anywhere at all. Fallen Crusader is 10% strength proc in PvP, not 15. Okay, to cross that out, scribble all over it. It is 10% in PvP. They nerfed that a while ago and they never changed it. So that means it is 10% damage in PvP on proc. And the proc is 50-60% uptime, so it's like 6% output. While Razor Ice is much higher uptime and does go up to 15%, it does not nerfed in PvP. It's not nerfed in PvP. So you get that 15% frost damage, which is pretty much all of our damage, since Killing Machine is now frost damage for your obliterates. And you get a little tiny extra damage from Razor Ice. Maybe it's like 1 or 2%. That could be like 15, 17, like that area. So the output from Razor Ice is much higher than the output from Fallen Crusader. Though you do get a heal, which is nice. And Strength buff does allow you to get bigger Death Coil heals. Not Death Strike, because that's percentage healing, but Death Coil, sure. So, but really, Razor Ice is the general use one. If you want to prioritize survivability a little bit, don't run Crusader. Run Sanguination or Spell Warding. These are the niche ones that I believe are going to be worthwhile having in your bags on different weapons, so you can swap them in the lobby. Not in the game, because that doesn't work anymore, but in the lobby before when you see the comp. So, when you're talking Sanguination, this is fantastic as a general use survivability one. Like, let's say you just always die to Thug, or you always die to Ret Warrior, and your healer can't save you, and you've never won a game against it, you're sick of it. This is that setup that I was talking about, where you can be like, alright, Flark, I die, I'm squishy, it's over, I don't know what to do, DK sucks, I don't want to play this anymore. You have the Stamp Trinket, you have Sanguination, we have some talents we're going to add. I'm going to give you a spoiler, Transfusion, a little spoiler, a little taste of it. But this is another key component on that, hey, I don't know how to live, help me situation. Rune of Sanguination, huge heal, with the Stamp Trinket, even huger, gives you a chance for those Death Strikes to come back up and save you. So Sanguination, very good against those teams that are just killing you every time, if you're finding it very hard to live. What you want to make sure you do, though, is analyze your own queue sessions. So, let's say you're winning against this comp. Don't just randomly swap to Sanguination, because they do a lot of damage. If you're winning, you're winning. But let's say you're losing to a comp. You see them in the lobby, and you're like, oh my god, it's that Ret Warrior again. These guys have killed me every time. What do we do? That's when you change. That's when you make a situational change. You analyze. I'm not winning this matchup. I have a 25% win rate into this matchup. If I could live, we would win more, and then I would go up in more rating. That's when you make these changes. Similarly, if you're having that same exact problem, but instead of Ret Warrior,
I need a fucking team.
Shadow Priest Mage, or Lock Ellie, or Boomy Ellie, and you're like, well, they just swapped me and killed me. Because some of those rock comps or swap comps generate their win conditions by going your target, your enemy, your partner, for a long period of time. They just go him, they go him, they go him, they go him. And then they swap to you when he pops all of his defensives. And now they swap off the defensive. Since they're casters and they have instants, it's much easier for them to swap, since they don't have to run all the way over to the other guy. So spell cleaves have a tendency to rot the team and then swap off of defensive. Swap to this guy, swap to that guy, swap. He popped wall, swap back. Okay, he used cocoon on that guy. Okay, swap back. Oh, he used bark skin on that guy. Swap back. Those kind of things. So if you eliminate their win condition of just swapping off of defensives by making yourself counter this so hard, you swap spell warding and stam trinket, and again another spoiler. Maybe
I'm gonna go back to obliteration
Cadaverous Pauler, right? And you take out that win
for the
condition,
burst.
then you could be giving your team a
I
chance
think
to win the game.
Icy Talons works
So let's
better
say
in
you queued
two
into
hand
that,
or
you would
one
lose
hands.
every game. You got nothing to lose. You lost every single time you played, right? You did not win any games. So if you put on spell warding Cadaverous and they swap to you and it doesn't do anything, and that gives you a chance to recover, and then you have another go and you win in that go, then you won a game that you would not have won. And that's why these niche rune forges are useful, because you won a game that you wouldn't have won. And that's how you get rating in World of Warcraft, is by finding ways to win games that you weren't winning before.
Right.
So, Razor Ice, general use damage. Fallen Crusader, slightly worse general use damage. With a heal, it's just worse output. But Sanguination and Spell Warding are
Wow.
niche abilities, one for spell cleaves and one for everything else, where you can survive better and give yourself a chance to win. And that's itemization. That was tough. That was tough. That was a lot of work for not even the bulk of the guide yet. So we're gonna have to keep moving along. We've got talents, PvP talents. We've got legendaries and covenants after, and then some playstyle, some comp decisions. It's a lot of things. Let's talk about them. PvE talents. First row. This is going to be nice. It's going to feel good because I can give you solid answers. Inexorable Assault. Cold Heart is nerfed in PvP. You would never want to chains to do damage anyway, because you have to chains off targets to peel them, and chainsing off targets to peel them removes all your stacks and gives you damage on a target you're not hitting, and the damage in PvP is 66 or 70% lower than it is in PvE, so it's trash, 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 trash. Literal trash.
Peel.
So,
Okay, getting aggro off of a squishy group. Enough.
forever. Icy Talons, rather, so bad. It's just attack speed, which is just so unimpactful, and it's uptime reliant, so it's trash. So you're going to use an Inexorable Assault.
Yeah.
Boom, done, use an Inexorable Assault. Easy. This row, Runic Attenuation generally was better, but now because we're so dependent on winning during pillar goes with this talent down here, we'll get to it in a second, and it's so important that we never run dry on runes while we're nuking people in those goes, Murderous Efficiency is just better. Because remember, Obliteration gives you Killing Machine, consuming the Killing Machine gives you a rune, you have tons of generation during that window, you'll never run dry on runes, it's a full rune reset, so to speak, every time you pillar with the two talents working in synergy, and you will always get a max use out of your pillar. So you're going to use Murderous Efficiency. There's two set in stone talents. Blinding Sleet and Asphyxiate. I don't think you even switch to Asphyxiate ever now, because we have our own AoE stun covering that later, which is perfectly set up with Blind, and also Blind helps you set up other goes with your teammates when you don't have Absolute Zero, and it's a fantastic 5-second peel, and it even puts a slow on them afterwards for 6 seconds, which is just an added benefit to an already good talent that we used all the time. So I don't even know if you ever swap off Blind now. I haven't swapped I have not swapped off Blind since the expansion was released. So therefore, I've never found a situation, even though Asphyxiate still seems like it's situationally good, I have not found myself in a situation where I would ever use it. So that might be a third set in stone talent, Blinding Sleet. Now you've got this line of set in stone talents. Avalanche is a fourth. Frozen Pulse gets outweighed by Avalanche because you get Rhyme Procs from Necrolord, more on that later, which makes Avalanche just gain more value in overall damage over the course of the fight and in burst situations than Frozen Pulse. So it's better in burst, and it's better overall. Avalanche, 4th set in stone talent. Frost Scythe is just a meme. It's only good for PvE. It does substitutes for Obliterate. It's terrible, awful. So 4 set in stone talents. The ones that are highlighted right here, all set in stone.
Chill stop.
Pact.
What is
and
that one?
Wraithwalk
Other one called?
are the only options here because Permafrost is too slow for a meta this bursty. That will be good when the meta slows down. Death Pact
Necrotic
and Permafrost generally
Aura.
swap back and forth. One of them's a meme and the other one's good, and
Got it.
then it turns a meme and the other one's good. They swap back and forth. Right now, Permafrost is too slow for this meta. Wraithwalk is fantastic against Frost Mages and their 9-second roots. Binding Shot and their unbreakable 7-second root, which makes me sick just thinking about it. And that's what it's generally really good at, preventing very long roots. Shaman, 8-second Earth Grab, 7-second Earth Grab. Those things are all very, very good to Wraithwalk. If you're finding yourself in a comp that you just get rooted behind a pillar and can't play the game, use Wraithwalk. If you're dying, use Death Pact. Death Pact is the only thing fast enough in a meta like this to give you another chance to maybe just barely win. I generally play Pact. This row is interesting. I think Glacial Advance is too clunky and slow to ever be good, ever. And like I said, I think Razor Ice is already good. Technically run Glacial Advance and Fallen Crusader, but again, too clunky, too slow, not good enough. Hypothermic is actually pretty solid and can be macroed into like Pillar and then make it so you are certainly going to get perfect goes off. And also actually works with Deathstroke. So it can be a survivability tool, again, if you want to mix it in with that Transfusion, Sanguination, Stam Trinket, Hypothermic Presence package. It's another survivability tool. Gathering is just passive increase to your AoE damage, which is good. This is just your general use output. Hypothermic is your niche utility where you can survive better and get maybe more perfect goes with Obliteration. And Glacial Advance has value there, but it's clunky. This row is very interesting. In fact, it's the only interesting row, because now I was able to give you set in stone talents for every single other row. So pay attention to this. If you feel like you really want the full survivability kit because you're just dying and you're sick of it, pick Hypothermic Presence. If you just want passive, shut your brain off, a little bit extra damage, pick Gathering Storm. And we'll keep a watchful eye on Glacial Advance, which is too clunky right now to see any play. Obliteration is the only talent you'll ever run in this row, ever, through all of Shadowlands. I'm making that prediction now. I will change my mind if the game changes for future guides, but just call it a guess. I predict that at no point during all of the Shadowlands expansion, which is a pretty bold guess, by the way, because generally these talents switch around over the course of expansion, I don't think you will ever swap off Obliteration. Killing Machine got
Usually
so
don't.
much
Yeah.
value
I don't think I ever had.
during this expansion.
Kata.
Obliteration is just so good, and the other ones are so clunky in PvP. Icecap just doesn't have enough value, and Breath of Sinjagosa is breath. It drains all your runic. It's disgusting if you get peeled. If you get 7-second rooted by Binding Shot, you lose the game playing breath. It's nerfed in PvP as far as damage goes. It's so clunky. It completely destroys your survivability because you have to spend all your runic power to use it.
Yeah.
It is so bad in PvP, making Obliteration the only valuable option. Perfect. So you have so many set in stone talents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of 6. And then this row is interesting. That gives you some direction. With PvP talents now, I'll give you a little bit more direction. Chill Streak, always. You have a way to set that up by yourself. Again, more on that later. Which makes Chill Streak just perpetually always good. 70% slow with massive damage on a 45-second cooldown that will always be up for every single pillar is a must-take. Chill Streak, yes, always. Heartstop Aura, yes, always. I know the game is a little fast, so it seems like Heartstop Aura will not be as useful, but that is just a testament to how freaking good this PvP talent is. Because it's not just long, drawn-out games where their cooldowns go down.
It's all the time.
It's actually every game, because guess what? Kick and mobility and shorter defensives and rotational cooldowns like Holy Shot, Judgment, or Pillar, or Remorseless, or AMS, or Blink, Fists of Fury, Leg Sweep, all of these tools, even shorter cooldowns, all extended. It throws off everybody's game plan. Even when I queue into enemy Frost DKs, I'm like, oh shit, it's hard stop, it's hard stop. Like, I have a go in 5 seconds, no, it's hard stop, it's hard stop. Every go you have is slowed down.
Wow.
Every defensive you have to rotate into their goes is slowed down. It is the ultimate fulcrum shift ability. You get snowballed pressure just by having this talent equipped. These two talents you'll never swap off of ever, in any situation. So that means you have one. Necrotic Aura is the output one. If you need extra output, if you're bursting all in, you're playing an all-in setup, that's what I do. So this is what I always run. If you're playing an all-in setup, I play DK Enhance HPAL, we all do magical damage, you can just nuke people 8% harder. It's impactful. So if you're playing with a magical user and you want extra damage, Necrotic Aura. But remember, you have utility. Delirium against mages, monks, DH. Mage Blink, Monk Roll, DH Flourish. It destroys all of those mobility options. It still does. It did BFA during my guides, it did in Legion, and it does now. It slaughters all of those. Actually, I don't remember. I know it existed in Legion, but I don't remember. It's gone through a lot of changes, but it certainly didn't BFA, and it certainly does now. It shuts down all mobility. If you don't want people to get away from you, Delirium shuts it down. That said, it's not quite as valuable now that you have Necrolord doing the same thing. More on that later. But Delirium's disgusting against mages, and probably will still see value as seasons go on and this crazy burst meta slows down. Death Gel is bad. It's like fine, but no, it's not. It's terrible. When you reapply Chains of Ice to put on Death Gel, it takes off your Chains of Ice, and if they have a root break, like a shift, then they just shift off everything anyway. It's just like so not that impactful. And if you're doing it like a grip root, the root breaks from your damage, so it's no different than doing a grip blind, and they don't have any value when you have them both, right? So it's just a worse grip blind, and you don't get extra value for having it in addition to the blind, so you'll still run blind, which means it never gets any value. So Death Chill,
That's so
even though
scary.
it has so much packed into one
DKs are so
none of it's good
devastating.
enough to be Death Chill sucks. Dark Sim, utility, very powerful to steal poly and then do a go, but you want to cleave an entire team. So stealing a poly or a clone doesn't feel quite as good when you could actually just kill them all at the same time.
Nice.
And again, you're giving up a PvP talent for a choice that may or may not be good. I think Dark Sim is better with Unholy than it is Frost, and I have not picked the talent one time, despite, you know, we're going to queue eventually soon, it seems like, at the highest MMR. And I'm never, well, the second highest. Chanimals, it's hard to catch up there, dude. But I'm never going to play it, and I'm sure you can, and maybe we'll see value for it soon, but when you're not stealing G-Pies that are being spammed every second in BFA Season 4, and it's not quite as impactful in this meta, and I've literally never swapped to it, but the utility is all still there. Poly, Fear, Clone. You can steal a lot of impactful things. I just haven't found a use for it. Cadaverous is that niche choice that I said you would pair with Spell Warding if you literally can't live. Again, find out for yourself.
Yeah, you probably forgot this.
And your
Wow,
games
has
are being
voice chat
lost because you're
out.
dying. On Switch to Cadaverous Ball. Because
Most people do.
you want to give yourself a chance to
Pretty
win.
good though.
And sacrifice
quick.
8% additional damage to have
Good
a
for
chance to
VGs
win,
and
right? If you're
instances.
not winning the game with this 8% additional damage, then literally become tanky enough that you diffuse an
Alright, I'm
opponent's
gonna go in
damage,
and
you have a chance to get more win conditions.
try to
than
flank.
Cadaverous Ball or Spell
then
Warding is a really interesting
pop everything.
spec in spell cleaves where you can't find a
Or
way
not.
with it. Dead of Winter, on the other hand, is butts. They're the worst thing in the entire game. It's a
Shell.
bad stun with a drawback. It is so bad for a meta like this. It's so unimpactful, and you will never run it. Ever. The end. Transfusion was the Sanguination
Fuck!
spell, right? I said Cadaverous with Spell Warding is your niche pick for surviving.
Alright,
Spell
well that
Warding.
didn't last long.
Transfusion with Sanguination is your niche pick with Hypothermic against surviving against everything else. Rat Warrior, Rogue Mage, Windwalker, DK, right? If you're having trouble surviving, use Transfuse. Dome, as our final PvP talent to talk about, is disgustingly fantastic. It stops all magic damage, so that's not just spell cleaves, but it's also, you know, Frost DK, Unholy DK, even Sub-Rogues, Shadow Blades, and of course that means Rogue Mage. But it's bugged, so I put this in my last video, but I'll do another shout out to Blizzard. Hello, your ability is bugged, please fix it. Unless this is what you meant for it to do, which is really dumb. It doesn't work on your teammates. When you use this talent, it goes to 80% on you, but stays 20% on them. It can't possibly be what it was supposed to do, but that is what it does as of the last time I checked. So this is going to be really good when it works for all those things that I just said it'd be really good for. But currently it doesn't work. Right now it gives you an 80% wall for yourself, which is great, but Zone is generally one of those team utility abilities, and right now it's not doing that with this talent, so oops. And that's all your PvP talents. We did it again. Fantastic. That's all talents. So we get a jump right into Covenants and Legendaries, because that is the thick of what you guys are here for. Remember, there are timestamps, so could have just skipped.
Oh my god, well GDKP
Hello, ladies and
is the only
gentlemen,
way
we're
to
here.
make gold.
Over time in Classic WoW, the
Oh my
ways
God.
that you can pretty easily make gold, or at least stay afloat in the economy, have been generally pretty consistent.
I've never
Used to
done
be
that.
The case you'd be able to get by with things
You know, I don't
like
think I ever
herbbing,
will.
doing
It's just so
maps of
stupid.
zones, mining, or the whole boost.
Just
feature
whoever
has
has the
become
most time to
more
grind
and more
will get the
prevalent
gear.
as we have gone
Not
onwards.
whoever
But over time, gold bid or
could
GDKP
roll for the
runs
gear.
have really come up as a big way to earn a lot of gold pretty easily. So it's definitely the result of a late game Classic economy. Open world farms nowadays are just super competitive. Blizzard haven't done much of a good job to stop people from botting it. You
Yeah.
hear tales of people flying through the ground to mine rich thorium veins, or people logging in spamming eagle eye macros on Black Lotus spawns, which I actually thought was going to be a thing that would happen, but I'm kind of surprised that it has all the same. It's just really edged the average player out of the market unless you're super into it as a gold farmer. I even hear that it's difficult to compete on small servers as well. Arcane crystals have started to drop off as the demand falls off a cliff for them. They're just not as useful for as many things in Phase 6. Black Lotus remains somewhat consistent due to their usefulness in TBC, but still, even with the increased spawn rates, which was changed ages ago now, they're still not very easy to come across. Used to be able to get by and buy your consumables from a whole variety of farms, but nowadays whenever I see a post online or people talking about struggling to keep up in Naxxramas to afford the prices to raid, or that the raid is demanding of them, there's always that one comment saying, nah, just run a few GDKPs, it's easy to keep up, or I just run one or two every other week and I'm absolutely fine. And it's not just the result of the late game economy, but people have more alts now. They have more characters that they can run through GDKPs to support their main character's consumable needs. Now, of course, it's not your God-given right to have every single consumable respecs as you wish, epic mounts and stacks of gold left over just from a casual bit of farming. Currency is still a very valuable thing in Classic, but what was the go-to gold makers just feel so outdated and difficult to compete in, and to keep up with the costs of raiding with a reasonable time frame, it feels like a lot of people are having to do gold bid runs. Based on my own experience, I haven't needed to do gold bid runs ever personally. I don't really raid with the intention of making money. I spend a lot more than I'd ever make, but I stopped bothering doing open world farming somewhere between Phase 2 and 3, I'd say. Between the ganking, the amount of competition, the lack of Black Lotus spawns back then, just to mention a few things, it really became an unviable option for me. So I turned to instance farming, which feels like the only true alternative to GDKP because, well, it's instant. You don't have competition, you don't have interruptions. The only thing holding you back is your instance cap. And back then I farmed around
second
800 or
guess
so
now.
Diamond East, and I made a good amount of gold from that. And later on, midway through Phase 5, I transferred server off Gehennis over to Pirewood Village, and I ended up making a lot of gold from that. In fact, the most gold I've made in Classic has been from server transferring. For
Oh my
arcane
God.
crystals on Gehennis I bought for about 50 gold, and they were going for 85 plus on Pirewood. Felcloth was the
It's
same
like,
deal,
how much
easily
is a server
doubled in
transfer
price,
again?
Same with Bloodvine. So
Was it 60? Fuck, it interrupted me. What? I have them. That's it. Why does it have no volume? There we go. Does it smell like ass? Why are the voices not? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to hear it over and over again. Yeah, the guy gotta go. Monk. Really? Fucking wipe.
Technically, the most money I've ever made in Classic has been from spending real-life money. So, yeah, it's funny how things work out, isn't it? What about the
Surely
Burning
is.
Crusade, though? Is open world farming going to be in a better shape than it is at the moment? Are we all going to be forced into instance farming again? What about the new cooldown items from tailoring like Spellcloth or alchemy like Primal Might? There's going to be plenty of people with profession alt armies set up ready to go. Everybody will be doing these brand new methods, and sure, they're going to be good, but will they be better than joining a gold bid run where players throw hundreds of thousands of gold into a collective pot? Well, maybe in the early raids when their demand is super high, but as the later tiers go on, much like it's been the case with Classic, I don't think there will be a better way to make gold still. How much do you think a Dragonspine trophy from Gruul will go for? What about a Warglaive? Imagine that. This is where the conversations about limiting the amount of gold being taken over really come into the equation. Would it be beneficial? I have no doubt it would be. Is it possible? Well, that's the tough one. I don't really see a way that it is. What if we set the gold amount to a certain value? People will have banks full of items to sell. Do we remove every item from the game that isn't soulbound then? Well, is going into TBC with literally zero vanilla resources in the entire game really a good idea? Want to level jewel crafting? You better get your mining pick out and head over to Elwyn Forest, buddy, because that's what you're going to have to do. Vanilla resources are already going to be more scarce than TBC. Also, it doesn't stop people saving expensive green items like two-handers, for example, equipping them on a character so they're soulbind, and then selling them once the new expansion happens. Also, how do you tell a more casual player who's built up his gold and resources over the space of nearly 2 years that actually we're going to be deleting a bunch of your stuff, so players who are pretty much already going to be much more hardcore than you at the game can get ahead of you in about the space of a week again, because that's what's going to happen. I really can't think of a solution to the actual volumes of gold that are in the game which can be remedied moving over to TBC, though I do agree that it probably should happen, I just don't know how to do it. Then again, the real need for gold in the Burning Crusade is early, not progressively more and more as we've seen in Classic, mainly for all the crafted professional items which are extremely powerful for a long period of time. You have more routes to make gold as well, leveling through mainly dungeons, and then questing at level cap can earn a good few thousand gold. Dailies will be a thing in a later phase, they won't be in from launch, which will be another good way to get some passive income going. And perhaps the biggest one, well, I'd say so at least, would be the reduction in the amount of consumables that we need to use. No longer will it be the case that you're popping half a dozen different consumables for each pull in the Burning Crusade, as all items are either made into Guardian or Battle Elixirs, flasks counting as both, so your consumable list will go down from needing an entire bank vault for them to flask, potion, food,
Wow.
which will put a big hit in the amount of gold that you're going to need to go out there and farm. And instead you can just do what you like, and to a certain degree you should be able to find your raid consumes much more affordable, which I think is only ever a good thing. Whereas in Classic it's been exactly the opposite. We've had quite a few easy raids in a row now where the consumables have been more of a offset to a learning curve to a certain degree until we've come around to the next Rammus, and there's been a lot more guilds wiping and finding progression. Whereas in the past you'd be so used to popping everything for every pull because you're just so used to one-shotting things, but now you're actually wiping consistently and perhaps going through hundreds, or I even hear sometimes thousands of gold in the space of a raid night or perhaps a week, which just isn't sustainable for a lot of players, hence the need to swap over to GDKPs shouldn't be as much of a thing in the Burning Crusade. So will you be essentially forced to run GDKP to remain competitive and make a good amount of gold in TBC? Whilst I think it will still be overall the best way you can make gold, I don't think that will be the case. I think the environment we'll have early on into TBC, where everybody's doing the new methods, the new cooldown items, gathering the new resources, should be able to get you in a nice amount of gold on top of level capped questing if you do opt into doing that. Of course there'll be the actual prices that things start moving for on the auction house, and how competitive open world will be, which will no doubt be considerably more so than it was in Classic, but hopefully it shouldn't be impossible, just because, well, as the expansion goes on, there's less you need gold for. The reason I think GDKPs will still be the best is much like in Classic. As we go on through the expansion, more people level alts, more people have more spare time, and then you'll be wanting to buy items not only for PvE, but now we have Arena, a much more competitive PvP environment where people will definitely want to be throwing gold on some really powerful neck, rings, perhaps trinkets, or even weapons at times. I think
And
if
then
you
there'll
do
be
have
more
any
play and
concerns
play.
with gold in TBC, it's going to be really early on, when we see people with gold caps running into an economy and trying to corner items really early on. So
Oh,
what do you
God.
think about the gold making situation in TBC?
Inflation.
Do you think it's going to be
Big
GDKP
time.
or die? Do you think just gathering resources or perhaps dungeon grinding will be good enough? How about the boosting meta? It will not be as good as it is at the moment because mages get the AoE capped. Prop paladins take over the range though. And what about gold resets in the Burning Crusade? Do you
Okay,
have
I'm
any
curious.
thoughts toward-
Wow. On. Okay. I like an Albion where nothing is soulbound. You can just sell anything you want. It's like, probably because it's a full loot PvP. I mean, it makes sense in that game. That's so cool looking. Take there it is. Growth. What the fuck? Oh, because I went through. Should have been more careful. Cool. Farming levels. Do I have mail? No. 90. train while injured. Hell no. Affliction. Maintain agony, maintain corruption, cast unstable affliction. First rotation. Agony, corruption, unstable affliction. What the hell is that? Okay. Affliction. Rampant contagion. Doing armor. Okay. That goes over there. That goes over there. I've played this character in a long time. Alright. Oh yeah, flight. Oh. Unstable affliction. Phantom singularity. The hell is that? Talent. Wow. 65 dollars? What? Say what? Warn any who follow his orders face prison. Oh shit.
Tomorrow, starting early in the morning, there is going to be a massive protest event taking place in Washington, D.C. in defense of Trump. Now, the actual event is scheduled for the 6th, which is a couple days from now, when there will be a joint session of Congress. Many of you probably already know this. The latest news on this front is that D.C. will be calling in the National Guard to help assist police in keeping the peace and controlling the crowds as they come to Washington, D.C. And there are bigger questions about what the military will do, what the National Guard will do, if Donald Trump seeks to use them to stay in power. We've already heard from some of the most ardent Trump supporters that Trump should use the Insurrection Act to hold new elections in several states. I have not been a proponent of that, but I have mentioned that Trump could use the Insurrection Act to restore constitutional protections in states that have curtailed them, notably in New York, where they have suspended people's rights to worship and peaceably assemble, and in many other states that have done the same. Protecting someone's constitutional rights is actually grounds for invoking the Insurrection Act. Well, from that argument, many Trump supporters have said, to protect our constitutional rights under the Electors Clause, Trump should have new elections. Perhaps going a bit too far, but there are many people who are concerned Trump might actually do it. In a new opinion piece for the Washington Post, a joint opinion piece by all 10 living former defense secretaries, they say involving the military in election disputes would cross into dangerous territory. They call on the acting Secretary of Defense to uphold their oath and allow for a peaceful transition of power. Why would they write this? Well, look, normally I'd say the media is writing clickbait nonsense in an effort to rile you up and make some claims that may or may not be true and make you think the world is ending. But, however, many on the left would probably accuse me of doing the same thing, so what more can I say? I will mention, however, that these are former defense secretaries. I don't think they're writing this because they hope to make money. I think they're actually worried Trump may call upon the military to support him in somehow staying in power. And he might do it. I mean, I can't speak for, currently serving members of the armed forces. My general understanding is that they mostly support the president. We've heard polls, however, throughout the past several months that Trump has lost the support of the military. I don't know if I believe those polls, but far be it from me to question the experts, right? I mean, the polls were just spot on for the past several years. No, I really don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't. I think my assumption, same as most people, is that rank and file military members, not the high-ranking political members, the generals and the high-ranking individuals. I think regular service members like President Trump. Not every single one, but I'm sure a lot of them do. The question is, how does the National Guard feel? Because there's already reports coming out about the National Guard coming into D.C. to defend and support Joe Biden's inauguration. I guess you could put it that way. They're probably just doing their job in keeping the peace and protecting, our society, I guess, or our system, the establishment, whatever. Not in a bad way. Just, hey, look, we're having a transition, and sometimes someone you don't like wins, right? But what if Trump does call the National Guard? And what if the National Guard actually supports him? What if Trump calls on his high-ranking individuals and they don't support him so the orders never get conveyed? What if Trump puts in his own acting Secretary of Defense who then goes and directly gives orders? More importantly, what if certain service members are instructed to report directly to the acting Secretary of Defense? Those things have actually happened. Trump has replaced civilian leadership at the Pentagon with loyalists to, well, to himself. Maybe he will really call on the military, and thus we're seeing the other side now come out and say, don't do it. All that matters in the end is, who does Trump have the support of? And more importantly, is Trump really going to do it? Well, beyond this, I think he might. You know why? Because in New York, for instance, they're saying they're launching forensic financial analysis in a criminal probe against Trump. Democrats are now calling for a criminal investigation into Trump over the leaked phone call in Georgia. Y'all are giving Trump very little choices. He can peacefully leave the White House like you've asked, and then just walk into a prison cell, so you've claimed, or he can stand up and he can fight back. I know what Trump supporters want him to do.
Yeah.
Let me read a little bit of this op-ed and tell you what they're saying, because the interesting thing about this story is they're actually calling on Trump's subordinates to defy him should he tell them to invoke, military power. Many news outlets are reporting that they're just saying the military shouldn't be involved, or that they fear Trump himself may stage a coup. A lot of people on the left say, Tim, why won't you, the leftists are like, Tim needs to use more left-biased sources. Well, they're saying, military fears Trump will stage a coup. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but let's read this. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. Got a P.O. box if you want to send me some stuff, but the best thing you can do is share this video.
Where did I put
If everybody
fear?
who watched my videos and liked them shared them, I'd be bigger than CNN in no time. Unfortunately, most people don't share, and that's really the best thing you can do. And that's okay. You don't owe me anything, but it's greatly appreciated. It really does. It's better than any marketing anyone could buy. But don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's read just a little bit first from this, and I'll tell you what's going on. The Washington Post says, as former secretary, it says all 10 living former secretaries of defense, which is Ashton Carter, Cheney, William Cohen, Mark Esper, Robert Gates, Chuck Hagel, James Mattis, Leon Panetta, William Perry, and Donald Rumsfeld. They say, as former secretaries of defense, we hold a common view of the solemn obligations of the U.S. Armed Forces and the Defense Department. Each of us swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We did not swear it to an individual or a party. American elections are the peaceful transfers of power that result are hallmarks of our democracy, with one singular and tragic exception that cost the lives of more Americans than all of our other wars combined. The United States has an unbroken record of such transitions since 1789, including in times of partisan strife, war, epidemics, and economic depression. This year should be no exception. Fascinating that they've invoked the Civil War in this conversation. They go on to mention that other elections have occurred, recounts and audits have been conducted, and they push the establishment line. The courts have found nothing. The results have been certified. But they haven't actually answered any of these questions. When you listen to that leaked phone call from the Washington Post between Trump and Brad Raffensperger, in Georgia, they acknowledge, first of all, there were 2 dead voters. I would like to have that answered for. Can you give me some clarity? I mean, 2 isn't a big number, right? It's kind of concerning. But they don't explain why the other numbers from Trump's lawsuits are irrelevant, which includes thousands more, so they claim. They don't explain how they know that people who changed their addresses moved back into the state. They provided no evidence to that. The claim is there, the evidence supports Trump, and they've provided nothing to counter that. And now, these 10 former secretaries of defense are repeating the same lines. They go on to say, as senior Defense Department leaders have noted, there's no role for the U.S. military in determining the outcome of a U.S. election. Efforts to involve the U.S. Armed Forces in resolving election disputes would take us into dangerous, unlawful, and unconstitutional territory. Civilian and military officials who direct or carry out such measures would be accountable, including potentially facing criminal penalties for the grave consequences of their actions on our republic. You know what this is? Civilian and military officials who direct or carry out such measures would be accountable. When Donald Trump was on the call with Brad Raffensperger, he said something similar. You can't certify bad numbers. Why? That could be criminal. Who knows? And the left said that's Trump threatening and pressuring them with criminal prosecution. What do you think this is? These former secretaries of defense issuing this statement. This is a propaganda war. They are counting heads. They are fighting over influence. And this statement to me is actually quite shocking. The fact that they would warn civilian and military officials against supporting Trump should he give them orders says a lot. They think it's possible, and they are putting out that warning. If they didn't think it was possible, there'd be no point to it. They want to make sure you know. If you follow Trump's orders and you're wrong, they will come for you. In the end, it really comes down to conviction and principle of what you think is right. And this escapes the confines of legality. It does. Donald Trump is the president. If he gives a lawful order, like go and guard this building, I assume you'd have to go do it. You could defy the order. And then all that really happens in the end is which side wins. Now, the left can say whatever they want. They can talk about how you must support the establishment. I'm telling you, we've seen it throughout history. What happens to these individuals if Trump ends up winning? I don't know. I really doubt anything would happen to him. But they're telling you right now, if you support the president, even if the order, this is the serious problem, right, that I brought up in a previous segment. What if you get an order as a National Guardsman, and it's just an innocuous order, like, we need you to form a perimeter around this place to prevent protesters from getting in. But then it turns out that order is actually you providing cover for someone to go in and destroy documents or something. Then they're going to claim you were in on it when you were just following a boring, normal order. You see how that works? That's where things get crazy. They go on to mention transitions, blah, blah, blah. But here's what they say. They say Acting Defense Secretary Christopher C. Miller and his subordinates are each bound by oath, law, and precedent to facilitate the entry into office of the incoming administration. They say we call upon them in the strongest terms to do so, as many generations of Americans have done before them. This final action is in keeping with the highest traditions and professionalism of the U.S. Armed Forces and the history of the democratic transition in our great country. This letter is not for Trump. They are not saying, in my opinion, although I'll put it this way, on its face, they are saying to Trump and to Trump's people, don't do this. But it sounds like the op-ed is actually to the men and women of the armed forces. Do not follow these orders from Trump should you get them. They're telling Christopher C. Miller, they are calling upon him, Trump's subordinates, not to do it. Interesting. They think he actually could. Well, over at Military Times, they say the military would put down Michael Flynn's proposed insurrection. They mention, less than 2 weeks after being pardoned, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn took to the airwaves to suggest President Trump could impose martial law and deploy the military to rerun the election. Could is doing a lot of work there. When it comes to the Constitution, you can do a lot of things, and then they're challenged, and they go to the Supreme Court. It's called checks and balances. But, yes, Trump could. Does it mean he will? I don't think so. Does it mean he would win? I don't necessarily think so. There is an argument, like I mentioned earlier, that the Insurrection Act allows you to send in the military or federalize National Guard to defend the constitutional rights of citizens should they be oppressed by a state. And that's happening due to COVID lockdowns. Whether you want to agree with the lockdowns or disagree with them, it's not the point. The left, I'm sorry, doesn't seem to get this. They love taking these clips of me and saying, oh no, look what Tim is saying. I'm not saying he should declare martial law. I'm saying Trump could. There's a lot of work there. Just because he could doesn't mean he should, will, or would win in court. You see how that works? Anyway, they go on to say, Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy and Army Chief of Staff General James McConville quickly responded by issuing a statement that implicitly disavowed both Flynn and his suggestion of martial law. They stated, there is no role for the U.S. military in determining the outcome of an American election. The statement echoed similar ones that Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley has been making since the summer. A handful of retired generals and admirals have also criticized Flynn, but the overall response from this group has been muted, perhaps out of fear that such criticisms could backfire by goading the president into taking this action precisely because he is being told he should not. Or more importantly, what if most of the people who are silent are the ones who support the president? And that could be. Confidence is everything. If right now every American woke up and just believed Trump is the president and they had confidence in the system, that would be the case. And I'm talking about members of Congress. It would be the case. Right now the country is split in terms of their confidence. You have fake news, leaked images, and nonsense garbage flooding the mainstream media and the airwaves. And this results in Democrats being confused and wrong about so many things. You take a look at the leaked audio, the leaked phone call, and there's a lot that's in it. In the snippets put up by the Washington Post that take things out of context. They say this is grounds for Trump to be investigated. Well, I tell you, if you want Trump to feel backed into a corner, this is the way you do it. From NBC News, Democrats ask FBI Director Wray to open criminal probe into Trump after a leaked phone call. Reps Ted Lieu and Kathleen Rice wrote that they believe Trump engaged in solicitation of or conspiracy to commit a number of election crimes. That's not true. But how many people read NBC News and will just believe this because, say, you didn't share a video like this? Share this video to support my work. No, but I'm kidding. But in reality, yes. Let me explain something to you. The phone call, as per the Republican Party in Georgia, was a confidential settlement discussion. Trump is suing because Trump believes he has a genuine grievance that fraudulent votes were in Georgia. When Trump said he needed to find 11,780 votes, what he was actually saying is, we have all of this evidence of hundreds of thousands of votes, but we only need 11,780. That was the full context. So as I explained in a different segment, and I'll explain again, it's not a crime when you're saying, you've wronged me, I have been wronged, and I would like a legal remedy. The Democrats telling their supporters this, well, they're wrong. And maybe that's it. Maybe Ted Lieu and Kathleen Rice just didn't actually listen to the full call, or they don't care. Nobody cares. Because you can point out that Trump said some things in that call that were incorrect, or what he was not sure of. The Trump supporters are going to say that's not important. The Democrats are going to say it's very important, and vice versa. I happen to think that, for the most part, the call was not that big of a deal. It's Trump doing what Trump has been tweeting about. There's nothing in that call that we didn't already know Trump has said or done before. He's even tweeted at them, you could go to prison. Something to that effect. Or Lynn Wood has. So how is it all shocking when Trump says, it could be a crime? What we learn from this is that the country is fractured. There is no reason for me to believe that there is any difference between military service personnel and a regular American when it comes to their politics.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people have said that,
All right.
they believe military personnel tend to be
rotation.
conservative. My understanding is not necessarily true. I lived on a military base briefly at Fort Carson, Colorado. I knew a lot of people. Many of them were fairly traditional Democrat or liberal types, not staunch conservatives. And there were some people who were pretty conservative. I know people. I also lived in Newport News briefly and knew many people at Fort Eustis. So I've had my experience with people, regular people. That's it. Now, maybe they're more conservative, maybe they're not. Maybe they support the president, maybe they don't. But I don't think we can know for sure. And more importantly, it comes down to who would support the president. Does it matter if retired generals and former secretaries of defense are opposing Trump? Honestly, a little bit, but not that much.
Yo.
What matters is, do the lower-ranking commissioned officers
Yeah, it's the
and the
headset
higher-ranking
icon.
non-commissioned officers.
That's
So
the
there's I'm not an expert on military rank, but NCOs reach a certain point where they can't progress. You got to get a commission. But let's say you've got some, officers, and they support the president. So they give some orders. Let's say that there's Chris Miller, acting Secretary of Defense, issues some orders. Let me explain. I'll say it again. Innocuous sounding, but support the president. We want you to go out and stop this group from doing this thing. What happens if it's overt? What happens if Joe Biden will be sworn and the National Guard says no?
Should have done both of them.
Here's what we're seeing
what
now.
the fuck is wrong with me?
D.C. National Guard to respond
Agony,
to pro-Trump protests
corruption.
this week. We will not allow people to incite violence, intimidate our residents, or cause destruction in our city, Mayor Muriel Bowser said. Members of the D.C. National Guard will respond when supporters of President Donald Trump protest the 2020 election results in downtown this week. The D.C. National Guard will assist the Metro PD with crowd management and traffic control. MPD's acting chief, Robert Conti, said in a news conference Monday morning the department is expecting a crowd larger than at two pro-Trump events in D.C. last year. Anyone who carries a gun at the protest or within 1,000 feet of a protest will be arrested, in line with D.C. law, the acting police chief said. Police posted signs this weekend at Freedom Plaza, so many people know this. But let me tell you something. They think it's going to be bigger. What happens if all the Trump supporters show up, and there's a million of them? Many of them have guns. The National Guard are blocking roads and supporting the police. What happens if if Trump comes out and Chris Miller of the Pentagon issues an order to the National Guard in D.C. to pull back? That's it. We got too many people. We're going to pull you guys back. That's it. What if they just tell the National Guard, you've been ordered to leave? Are they going to defy that order? Are they going to stay? What happens if some ranking individual who supports Biden gives them contradictory orders? You see how this could become problematic? Trump's still president. Trump can still give these orders. And my understanding, D.C. is a federal jurisdiction, so the National Guard and the police there technically should be following the orders of Trump. I'm not entirely sure how it would work with the police. My understanding is that he does have military police as such in federal jurisdiction. He should have authority over. What if they defy him? What if they say we won't take orders from the president anymore? What if they say we choose to ignore the president? What will
Again?
Trump's orders do? You can argue that Trump has lost the election and that he should not use the military. But what if before Trump is actually out of office, within 2 weeks, he no longer can command the armed forces? And then we see a fracturing of executive authority. Honestly, don't know. I'm just saying. How will Trump supporters react seeing the military defy lawful and legal orders from the commander-in-chief? I don't know. I'm just saying it's possible and would be interesting. More importantly, the National Guard is going to be on the ground for Joe Biden's inauguration. And they say thousands of National Guard troops prepare to support Biden's inauguration. I like how they say prepare to support. I'm sure they're just being ordered to stand guard, and they're doing it because they're serving the country and, and D.C. and where they live and things like that, and that's honorable. The question I have now is whether or not they're there to support the president, the police or otherwise. We know that many police and military will just follow orders, and they won't think twice. This is what people need to really understand about what it means to be just following
Military.
orders.
They're calling them
I
military
remember asking
traitors in
somebody
the
in the military,
comments.
if you were ordered to
defense
fire
officer-
on a
The
child,
defense officials
you
they were
do it?
talking about that.
and a lot of people I know who are, I got varying answers. Some said absolutely not. And then others pointed out that in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, they actually use kids for this reason, and that if you're given an order, you take it. However, killing a kid may be illegal, and you may be killing a civilian, so typically they won't do it. That's my understanding. They wouldn't. But some people actually told me they would, and they said it depends on the context, depends on the conflict. If you've got a report that kids are being strapped with bombs or stuff, they actually, my understanding is they just keep going. They don't stop for them because the kids might be strapped to be like comic. It's horrifying stuff. It's horrifying stuff. But outside of like that question, and the reason I bring it up is it's obvious and it's extreme. Like, what person is going to actually like, I got no problem with this? No, most people are going to be like, dude, and they're gonna have to take serious issue with it, right? But some people.
Who's
pointed
getting
out,
the orbs?
you could get you can get an order from someone, and you don't know what the full context is. You just trust your commanding officers, and if the order itself is not on its face crazy, you would do it. Like if you saw someone with a weapon running towards a group of people and they ordered you to stop the guy, you probably would stop the guy.
What the
But
fuck?
like I mentioned earlier, what happens when those orders are just innocuous? They'll probably just do it. And that's the important thing here. What if Trump gives, or someone gives the National Guard orders pertaining to Biden's inauguration, which weakens security? What happens if they order them to do something which actually stops Joe Biden? You see the interesting conundrum here. Trump is still the president. Should they defy him? You can call it a lame duck or not. That's an important issue. And it's going to come down to it may come down to Trump giving an order or someone giving an order, and these guards, having read this op-ed from the Washington Post, fear they could get criminally prosecuted by the incoming administration, and then they just do nothing. And what if it's a legitimate order? What if it's a real threat? You need to understand that when it comes down to anything, we are human beings, not computers. So they're warning these former secretaries of defense, you'll be criminally prosecuted if you do the wrong thing. Well, what do I know? What's the wrong thing? You don't know for sure.
We should all go down
I'll
the
tell you
middle
one thing, though.
and
If you
take
really
out the
wanna make sure
alliance
that Trump
orbs. That way we
pushes it,
could put our
you do
guy in
this.
there.
From the Washington Post. New York prosecutor hires forensic
Listen.
accounting experts as Trump criminal probe escalates.
Wow.
This story from just December 29th, only about a week ago. They say, District Attorney Cyrus R. Vance Jr. opened the investigation into 2018 to examine alleged hush money payments made to two women who, during Trump's first campaign, claimed to have had affairs with him years earlier. Excuse me. The probe has since expanded and now includes the Trump organization's activities more broadly. They're going after Trump because they hate him, and we know this. Now, many people
they
say
do.
they're not going to arrest Trump. Biden has said, blah, blah, blah. Biden has said, blah, blah, blah. These are state-level charges. Trump is looking at leaving office and having zealots in blue states go after him. Should Trump believe that his life is in danger, he has nothing to lose. Now, you might think Trump is the best guy in the world or the worst guy in the world, or you might just think he's not that bad, right? Typically where I'm at, these people are nuts. Trump's not that bad. I don't think he's the God Emperor. It's a funny joke, but you're not that bad. But do I think Trump will fight for self-preservation? Oh, absolutely. I don't think Trump's the kind of guy to be sitting there saying, man, the country's on the verge of falling apart. I better just let them arrest me and put me in prison because I don't want the country to be in strife. No, I think Trump's the kind of guy to be like, Joe Biden is crooked. They're not going to lock me up. I'll lock them up. Guards. And calling out those who would support him. Trump has called on supporters to be in D.C. The National Guard is going to be deployed to protect the city and work with police. To what extent is Trump willing to do?
Positioning.
I don't know. I don't. But I know that he's facing likely, he's currently facing criminal probes, and boy, do these states want to go after him. And that to me is why it's interesting when you go back to the Washington Post article, how they bring up the Civil War in their opening, I believe, second paragraph, mentioning the one time in history things didn't go as planned. Blue states would seek to imprison a president, an ex-president, after he lost an election, just because they hate the guy. And they're accusing him of all these things. And look, if Trump committed crimes, by all means, then lock the guy up. I don't care if it's Trump or Hillary or anybody else. You commit a crime, you do the time, right? But going after Trump from blue states, not red states, is interesting. I mean, Florida could go after him. They're not. It shows you it's political, either because Trump's allies defend him or because Trump's enemies attack him. That's where
They're
we're at.
fucking
The blue states and the
5.
red states are in
What are we
a
doing?
legal war, a propaganda war.
Fire mage is
Culture war.
insane.
At what point does the talking stop? What do you think would happen if they actually arrest Trump? What do you think Trump supporters would do? I mean, they'd lose it. There's talk that Trump will run again in 2024 if he doesn't find some way to actually stay in power. Even Trump himself is on video saying, you know, we're trying really hard to keep it, but if not, I'll see you in 2024. So even Trump has said to donors at a party, I think it was donors, that he's going to try and stay, but if not, you know, he'll run again. What if New York arrests him, files a criminal indictment? Then he can't. And then what? The people who are coming to protest in D.C., they don't stand by the establishment. And it's interesting that the progressives do. That's weird to me. It's weird to see people like, you know, I won't call him out. There's a very high-profile leftist commentator who was mocking Lauren Boebert for wanting to carry concealed in D.C. And I'm like, if you're a leftist and you're an anti-fascist and you think the U.S. government is imperialist, how are you anti-gun? That's the crazy thing. Most of the Antifa people I know are actually pro-gun. So it's really funny to see establishment pro-Biden leftists claiming to be like progressives and then also saying, haha, guns are bad. I'm like, you're certainly not the revolutionaries. I wonder what Antifa thinks of you. Tomorrow's the start of the protests, man. We're going to see how it plays out. Will Trump invoke the military? I honestly don't think so. Normalcy bias? But I think the man's been backed into a corner, and he's certainly angry enough to say, why not? If he's going to go to prison anyway because they're going to come after him, what does he have to lose?
Damn, that's
Nothing.
true.
No, seriously, nothing. They're not just going after him, they're going after his organization, which includes what his family has. If Trump wants to save himself and his family and his grandkids, then he's got no choice but do something drastic. And that's that. And I'm not
So
saying
then,
you should,
okay.
I'm saying you push someone.
But he's a criminal. Like, his family, his kids and all that, what's going to happen when he does an insurrection and the retaliators go after his family too? Like, if he goes to prison, his family will be fine, assuming the ones that, you know, have not committed crime. So it's like he's risking so much on this grift that it could just be devastating for the Republican Party too, because it'll reduce their reputation and then it'll make it even easier for the Democrats to campaign off of this, because this will be a huge talking point for ads for the next like decade at least. Like, he supported Trump. You know, this guy supported Trump, insurrection. He's a danger to America. If he supported such a fascist dictator. Imagine what he'll do and all that. You know, you could go on and on and on. There's just so much stuff you could just hit someone who has supported a insurrectioner like that. And that's like devastating for the Republican Party, especially. God damn it. I was doing so good the last one. And it's really scary. He's risking this all for a stupid grift. Like, the chances of him actually succeeding are just minuscule, microscopic. Because the military has come out against it publicly. Then again, though, I'm sure he'll still try if it means like life in prison, or however long in prison he'll be in. It's probably, I'm sure it's life. I love it. Dungeon.
Someone like this, you're asking for it. You're asking for him to become desperate. Desperate people do desperate things.
Yep.
I guess we'll have to just wait and see. But I'll be honest with you. I don't think anything crazy is going to happen. I really, really don't. I think it'll end with Joe Biden being president. And it eerily feels a lot like an inversion of 2017 when Trump won in the first place. And now we're seeing Biden win. We're seeing a mirror image in many ways. We'll see how it plays out. I'll leave it there. Next segment will be tonight, 8 p.m. live over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Check it out. Hang out with us live. It'll be fun, and I will see you all then.
Unless we register our own protest against the obviously flawed voting process that took place in so many states. We are hopeful, he said, that this major issue that goes to the heart of our democracy is now firmly implanted on the agenda for effective action by Congress. End quote. I agree. The United States Constitution does not allow me to assign different electors to a state, nor should it. The United States Constitution does not give the option to the Vice President of the United States to just unilaterally decide which states are in and out, and it should not. Each state decides its electors through its people. But a small group of senators, including myself, have demanded that we not ignore the questions that millions of people are asking in our nation. So we have proposed a constitutional solution. Pause the count. Get more facts to the states before January the 20th. We proposed a 15-member commission, just like what was done after the failed election of 1876. We're encouraging people to spend 10 days going through all the issues so states can have one last opportunity to address any challenges. Then the states, as the Constitution directs, would make the final decision on their electors. I have some colleagues who have said that a 10-day commission is not enough time. So they have counter-proposed, just ignoring the lingering questions. We need to do something. My challenge today is not about the good people of Arizona.
And it will stand in recess until the call of the chair.
We'll pause.
Protesters are in the building.
Thank you.
What?
So a little recap of what we've been listening into here in the Senate while simultaneously a debate was playing out on the House floor. Significantly, we heard Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell deliver a pointed rebuke to those Republican colleagues of his who are baselessly, as he put it, trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election, saying that if we do so, this would damage our republic forever.
Yep.
McConnell pointed out this election wasn't even particularly close. The electoral margins were similar to the election Donald Trump won in 2016. And he said if this election were overturned by mere allegations by the losing side, our democracy would be on a death spiral. Senator Schumer also took the floor and attacked senators considering not validating the electoral votes, saying we are a country of laws, not men. He also further suggested that McConnell's strong rebuke came a little late. Senator Ted Cruz, who is apparently taking the lead for the objecting senators, is asking for a commission to be formed to examine the voting irregularities, as he put it, before the January 20th date. Various senators got up to argue both sides. Senator Amy Klobuchar repeated the famous phrase often attributed to Ben Franklin, "It's a republic if you can keep it." So lots of heated debate on the floor. We're going to bring in Professor Richard Briffault of Columbia University Law School, who's been watching along with us, and also Siobhan Hughes, who is a congressional reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks to both of you for sticking with us. Professor Briffault, let me start with you. What is your reaction to what you've been seeing on the Senate floor so far?
Well, so far I think it's been an impressive, thoughtful, measured debate. I was very impressed by Senator McConnell's statement about the nature of the threat to the republic, of the Congress actually engaging in a substantive review and rejection of the electoral votes. Also his point that this also is a threat to the Electoral College, which is something Republicans have been supportive of the Electoral College traditionally and now, but that this would be a challenge to that. And I was also impressed by Senator Toomey's statement, Senator Toomey, a Republican, who spoke against the challenge by saying that this would be the beginning of the federalizing of election law. It's a very good point that if Congress is going to start rejecting votes because there was something wrong with the state's electoral system, Congress is going to have to write rules for those state electoral systems, and that Congress has not, that different states have different practices, so that this would lead to a federalizing of the election laws, which is something, again, the Republicans have tended to oppose. So I think it's been interesting that to hear, I will call them kind of conservative objections, sort of conservative objections to Congress doing this, and not just objections based on the actual who you want to win. So I thought that was actually very interesting.
You make some very good points, and Siobhan, you made that point earlier as well, that one of the dangers here for Republicans is weakening the Electoral College system, and that's one of the reasons that many Republicans think it's not okay to just jump on this bandwagon, if you will. Talk to us a little bit more about that, because you're right, as Professor Briffault just mentioned, the idea of the federal government taking away a state's right to certify its own electoral votes is a fundamentally anti-conservative one, correct?
That's exactly right, because conservatives for years, decades, have emphasized states' rights. It's been one of their big defenses in so many of these political arguments. And were, as Pat Toomey put it, the federal government to step in and federalize elections, that too would undercut a very core tenet of conservative policies and approaches. I do want to jump in here to talk about the image your viewers see on the screen with protesters outside the Capitol. I currently am 10 blocks away from the Capitol and could hear those sirens going down the street towards the Capitol. The Capitol is in lockdown. There have been evacuations from the House buildings. A lot of Trump protesters have breached those barricades, the barriers that have been set up around the Capitol to preserve order.
So many of them.
There's just a bit of uncertainty right now about what the
There's
security
at least like
situation is on the
20,000.
Capitol. Security has increased a lot in recent decades, ever since a man named Russell Weston got into the Capitol and ended up shooting 2 police officers there. So
Shooting.
we're in a much more secure position than we have been at other moments in
Right
American
there,
history. But
in
that
front
said,
of
in
it.
these pictures that I'm seeing
Wow.
right now, and having been up at the Capitol, I can tell you, I am not accustomed to seeing those crowds that near the Capitol building at this moment. So a bit of a tenuous situation outside right now.
Yeah, it does look tenuous. There was some earlier video circulating that showed protesters sort of pushing up against guards there on the Capitol steps, and it's a little difficult to see from the video we have precisely how close those protesters are, or what sort of barrier there exists, but definitely a tenuous situation for sure. Siobhan, can you speak a little bit more to what Senators Cruz and some of the other by members of the House and senators and potentially some Supreme Court justices who would then do what exactly?
Well, so this is interesting. Ted Cruz is hearkening back to an earlier disputed election between Rutherford Hayes and Samuel Tilden. And in that case, a couple of southern states had sent up alternative ballots, disputed ballots. And Congress solved the problem by setting up this commission with, as you say, 15 members. And they ended up picking the president themselves, those 15. That process was so messy that Congress later came back and changed the laws. Oh, go on. Changed laws. They came up with the Electoral Count Act to establish a process for resolving situations when there were alternative slates of electors. So Ted Cruz is going back to an earlier period of time that he seems to feel should be the model. I will say it does ignore some of the subsequent legislative fixes that Congress did step in to make in order to preserve the system in which it is really the states who have power. That's something that is so important for Congress. Congress feels it is imperative that this be in the hands of the states and not federalized in control of Congress.
Absolutely. And Siobhan, I apologize that my mic was on there a little bit while you were talking. The producers were just letting me know that apparently Vice President Pence has left the Senate chamber, and they think perhaps for security reasons, and the press is being locked into the press room right now. So, of course, more on this as we get it, but hopefully there hasn't been a security breach, but it looks as if they are certainly, at the very least, taking precautions. Professor Briffault, I want to turn to you now. What can you expect will happen now that we've heard these arguments for the state of Arizona? Are we going to continue to hear the exact same arguments play out with all the contested states?
That's a very good question, and it really will depend on what the Cruz group is up to. Cruz is making the point that his objection is really not to Arizona specifically, but it's based on the fact that there's a lot of public doubt, the doubt that Trump is fanned, so there's a big fraction of the public doesn't trust the outcome. So he's saying he's not really challenging Arizona so much as wanting to have a commission that will just resolve all the disputes generally. So it's not clear to me whether there will be senators that challenge to join members of the House for all 6 of the so-called disputed states. Senator Hawley from Missouri has indicated he will challenge Pennsylvania. So it probably seems pretty clear for sure that we'll see a challenge to Pennsylvania. Senator Loeffler, who I think is still a senator, despite yesterday's, I guess yesterday's election is not final, I think has indicated she might be challenging Georgia.
Nice.
I'm not sure about that. But I do think we'll at least hear another one on Pennsylvania. It's possible we'll hear challenges for all 6 of the so-called disputed states, but I think we'll almost certainly hear one, at least with respect to Pennsylvania.
And then, Siobhan, if you were to guess, how long do you think the proceedings will last today? I mean, we've heard some estimates say they could go on, long into the night. Do you expect that to happen?
I do expect that to happen. There's a maximum of 2 hours of debate for each of the objections. We know there will be a minimum of 3, Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. I was also told that the chambers themselves might be cleansed after each of the debates, so that just as a COVID protection, that adds time. And then the chambers have gone into recess right now. That debate is not happening because there has, in fact, been a security breach. I can tell you from having been up there, protesters are not supposed to be on those stairs, and so that's a further delay that is going to be building more time into this process. And at this point, it's very, very uncertain how this is going to wrap up.
Yeah, I can just say that there have been some tweets that appear to show protesters inside the Capitol, and apparently the building is going into lockdown. Apparently, the senator, Kamala Harris's office is saying that the Capitol is going into lockdown. The vice president-elect is not on Capitol Hill. She was on the Hill earlier today. So it is certainly a tenuous situation. Hopefully security has it under control, but no doubt it's got to be a frightening moment for lawmakers inside. I mean, Siobhan, since you're a congressional reporter, what normally happens in situations like this?
There are not situations like this. Let me be perfectly clear. I was there during the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and there were certainly protesters outside waving flags, but it was absolutely nowhere near this scale. The Capitol Dome, you can see it's a large building. Underground, there are all sorts of tunnels that are like spokes on a wheel, spoking out from the Capitol, and so those are evacuation routes. People could get out through buildings on the sides of that dome. All of this, though, presumes that there aren't a significant number of protesters who have, in fact, entered the building itself. There was a large police presence there today, but it clearly was not enough to stop this. Normally, a couple of stern words from a police officer at a barricade much, much further away from the Capitol will stop people from advancing. But that advancement clearly did not stop. It progressed. And there's now, I don't want to overstate this or make anybody be too concerned. However, it looks like a siege.
Yeah, we are hearing that some House members have been taken off the floor, either by security or staffers. Again, I apologize that the information is rather vague. It's just coming out in bits and pieces right now. But it does seem to be a very worrisome situation. I'm sort of surprised that there wasn't greater security in place, that there wasn't greater preparation for something like this. Does that surprise you as well, Siobhan?
I do know that there was preparation. There were precautions taken. Things like lawmakers were told not to wear their pins so that they could not be identified as lawmakers and be targets. Wow. But clearly, whatever preparation there was not sufficient. The police forces simply did not anticipate this level of an onslaught. And there have been protests in D.C. before surrounding the elections. The Proud Boys were here not long ago. And while those marches did get unsettling at times, it was nothing like this. And so perhaps the security presence had been conditioned on that belief to think that whatever protests there were, they would only go so far. And that was clearly a miscalculation.
Siobhan, I just want to point out to our viewers as well that the president has just tweeted. I'm going to read his tweet. He wrote, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth." So he's sort of trying to flip this argument that we were talking about earlier on its head, the one of this being about states' rights versus the federal government. He's trying to frame it in the opposite light, saying that this is about states somehow recertifying their results. I'm not quite sure. Do you follow his argument, Professor Briffault? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I think we've lost Professor Briffault. Siobhan, do you see where he's going there with this argument about giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts? Because that confuses me a little bit.
With President Trump, it's always a little bit difficult to get entirely inside his thinking. But for context, I will point out that in 7 states that President Trump lost, a group of Republican electors who, of course, themselves had lost. They weren't picked to choose the president, got together in separate kind of fake or pretend meetings the day the electors were certifying the results and said, we believe that President Trump did in fact win this election. So there are alternative slates out there, and it appears that President Trump is trying to make a play to get legislatures to step in and certify the results of the alternate slate of electors, those pro-Trump electors. That is significant because in 7 of the states where the pro-Trump electors met, 5 of those are in the hands of the GOP.
Siobhan?
Those are Wisconsin. Oh, go on.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to point out we have video right now of the protester. Yes, I can hear you. I just wanted to point out the video that we're looking at right now is showing the protesters who've breached the Capitol. They're sort of wandering around, kind of almost like tourists. Some have their cell phones out taking pictures. They're probably as astonished that they're inside the Capitol as we are. It seems as if, they're just sort of walking up and down in between the ropes. They appear to be calm, but they're not supposed to be there. So it's unclear what their ultimate... No, they're not. So it's unclear what their objective is. But they do seem to be as amazed by their presence in the Capitol as we are. Taking out their phones, documenting everything. Where are the security guards? There seems to be no security there.
Another of those questions. There does not seem to be any security. It's not clear if the security is not there in sufficient numbers, or if this is part of a calculated effort to lower the temperature, focus on getting the lawmakers and Mike Pence, of course, to safety. The tweet that you just mentioned from President Trump, in addition to making an argument, also, of course, is inflammatory. It puts a target right on Mike Pence's back. And so perhaps the focus now is on keeping lawmakers safe instead of on pushing back these protesters.
Right. And of course,
the people in that... Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, of course, this is... Yes, please, go ahead.
So the view that you see, that appears to be the second floor of the Capitol building. And I'll just note that that second floor is on the same level as both the House and the Senate chambers. And so this does put these protesters
nice job.
Right on the same level as the House lawmakers and the senators. They are all in proximity. And so that is the potential risk here for the lawmakers and the elected officials.
Let me ask you something. Can people just walk into the Capitol building like that? There are no scanners to check for weapons. How does that work?
No, people cannot just walk into those buildings. In fact, right now, they can't even walk up to that driveway, the east wing of the Capitol, outside of the Capitol building. Once they get into the building, there are scanners. You have to dispense with your iPhones, with any phones that you might have, your keys. You have to have a special badge, a credential showing that you, in fact, have the right to be in that building. They are by no means supposed to be in that building. There are signs posted on those stairs below the protesters saying the only people who can be on these stairs are members of Congress. So even I, with my credential, do not have a right to be up there. As I'm watching this, I'm stunned by what I'm seeing.
It seems, though, that they're marching sort of in an orderly fashion between the dividers. Could security be doing this to sort of diffuse the situation, just sort of let them in and out to kind of calm things down? That would seem highly irregular, but it almost appears as if that may be what's happening.
So I want to be clear that I do not know what is in the heads of the security forces, but I will say this from having been up there. I can tell you that those security forces are especially trained in how to interact with people. And there is a major effort to diffuse tension, to talk people down from any tensions that there might be, because this comes up all of the time, even with lawmakers who enter, with reporters who enter, and it is imperative. Anyone who has that job has to have very, very good social skills, very good people skills, and that could be a part of what you are seeing in play right now.
Wow.
Sure, and let me ask you this. Are all of these people now trespassing? Could they all be arrested?
I don't know the legalities of whether they could be arrested for trespassing. I suppose that is a possibility. They obviously have not
There's
been
just
arrested,
way too many
and
people.
it appears that may
They
not
have
be
no
possible
cost for
because
that.
I don't know if there are the forces to
They're
arrest
gonna have
everybody
to
and what would transpire if
just
that
try to
happened.
keep them
You know,
away.
possibly the safest thing to do would be to get everybody out of the building so that this is no longer even an important place to be.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you know, we were not watching the House debate. We had our cameras on the Senate debate, but apparently, according to some of our reporters that were there on the House floor, I have a note saying that during the House debate, there was some chaos, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was taken out and a recess was called. So apparently, there were several lawmakers who were escorted off the House floor. Whether for security or not, we don't know, but it appears probably for security. Where would lawmakers be taken during a breach like this? Are there internal safe rooms in the Capitol?
There are hideaways. I don't know that there are internal safe rooms in the Capitol. The place is designed to protect against things like, for example, like a chemical attack. The ventilation is very good. But for something like this, when there is a target, the protocol has been to leave the Capitol. I don't know if you remember during, I think it was an inauguration more than a decade ago, where a plane penetrated the airspace and everybody was just asked to leave the Capitol. They kind of ran out. So the protocol is not to stay inside when there is this type of a threat. That's not the precedent.
Interesting. Now, I believe that we may also have Professor Kim Whaley with us, professor of law at the University of Baltimore and the author of What You Need to Know About Voting and Why. Are you with us, Professor Whaley? Hello.
Hi.
Professor Whaley, are you there? Hi.
I am, Tanya. How are you?
You know, we're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, we're keeping a very close eye on what's going on here at the Capitol. We're watching this extraordinary video of protesters who've breached the entrance. They've gotten inside the Capitol building. They're on the steps. They're not supposed to be there. Is this an amazing sort of level of tolerance? I'm sort of wondering why this is being tolerated in the Capitol and why, you know, we've seen protesters pushed back before, and I'm wondering whether we're thinking that this is such a volatile situation that security forces may be just allowing it to play out, or
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
What would you imagine is happening here?
There's just so many people.
Well, keep in
it's
mind,
like at
over
least
the
1,000.
summer, we did see peaceful protesters in front of the White House who were basically bullied by federal law enforcement. That was in a public space. Your First Amendment rights are not the same in certain spaces. So if this is a sort of a secure situation, as Siobhan indicated, that is in the Capitol, there is no First Amendment right to barge in that way. So it is unusual that we're not seeing law enforcement step up to the plate the way happened over the summer and in cities like Portland when it came to Black Lives Matter protests. But this is, you know, I think this is one of those moments in American history that hopefully we will never see again. We've never seen it before. So we have to have, I think, a little leeway for law enforcement trying to figure out triage. We've got members of Congress that are potentially at risk. We have the vice president with a target on his back in this moment because the president of the United States has been building up to this moment with his supporters now for weeks, encouraging people to come and to protest in this moment. So it is a bit unusual that D.C. local police weren't ready for this, but I just have to hope that no one gets hurt because we know that people within the Trump camp are heavily armed. There are strong anti-gun laws in the nation's capital, but of course not everyone has to be checked to cross the border from Virginia or Maryland into Washington, D.C.
Right, yes, that's why I was asking about scanners. Of course, obviously, if they're entering the Capitol illegally, they're not, putting their backpacks through the scanners. But that is, a big concern whether or not any of these protesters are armed, of course. I do want to point out that Capitol staff was given notice saying, please move inside your office to the nearest office, take emergency equipment and visitors, close, lock, and stay away from external doors and windows. If you are in a public space, find a place to hide or seek cover. Remain quiet and silence electronics. Once you are in a safe location, immediately check in with your OEC. No one will be permitted to enter or exit the business until directed by USCP. If you are in a building outside of the affected area, remain clear of police activity. And finally, await further direction. Well, Kim, that certainly, sounds rather ominous. I'm sure they have the situation under control, but
it's possible they just don't have the boots on the ground, I mean, to use a military metaphor, in this moment to manage this crowd.
Yep,
I mean,
what I'm
there are only
thinking.
a certain number of actual federal law enforcement. We have the FBI, we have the U.S. Marshal Service. We saw over the summer the Department of Justice deputized members of the Bureau of Prisons, prison guards, ICE sort of agents and things like that to take action in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement. So we've got that. We've got a limited federal law enforcement service. We've got then D.C. local police, and then number three would be, of course, the United States military, which in this moment answers to the President of the United States. I think it's quite interesting, or perhaps disturbing maybe, that over the weekend we saw 10 former secretaries of defense basically pen a letter that said the military.
So hungry. All right. Corruption, agony on everyone, right? Also,
Even when I turned on today, I looked and I saw thousands of people here, but you don't see hundreds of thousands of people behind you because they don't want to show that. We have hundreds of thousands of people here, and I just want them to be recognized by the fake news media. Turn your cameras, please, and show what's really happening out here, because these people are not going to take it any longer. They're not going to take it any longer. Go ahead, turn your cameras, please, would you show? They came from all over the world, actually, but they came from all over our country. I just really want to see what they do. I just want to see how they cover it. I've never seen anything like it, but it would be really great if we could be covered fairly by the media. The media is the biggest problem we have as far as I'm concerned. Single biggest problem. The fake news and the big tech. Big tech is now coming into their own. We beat them 4 years ago. We surprised them. We took them by surprise. And this year, they rigged an election. They rigged it like they've never rigged an election before. And by the way, last night they didn't do a bad job either, if you notice. I'm honest, and I just, again, I want to thank you. It's just a great honor to have this kind of crowd and to be before you. And
God damn.
hundreds of thousands of American patriots who are committed to the honesty of our elections and the integrity of our glorious republic. All of us here today
Kill one guy.
want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal.
All right. So many of them.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
You're grifting.
Here's some more journalists in the United States not screaming about this or even covering it. The Young Turks, they smeared Julian Assange plenty, and then they wouldn't cover this trial. And you know that Anna Kasparian gives tongue baths to war criminals at NATO conventions. They're always for more war at the Young Turks. They called it Nerf bombs when Trump bombed Syria. They wanted more. Every time it comes up, the Young Turks are for war, and I was always against it, and I was always right. Cenk was cheering on Libya.
All right. I am done for the day. Oh, no, till 7 p.m. All right.